I'm here with Yvonne, Director of Adult Literacy for Life.
Hello and welcome to day 3 of the National Ploughing Championships here at Ratheniska in County Laois, the final day. And as you can see, the sun is definitely shining today. What a difference a day makes. We're about to start our live stream, the official live stream of the National Ploughing Championships in association with UPMC from the Agriland tent, stand 305 here at the ploughing site. So do drop in. We're about to speak to Minister of State at the Department of Agriculture, Martin Hayden. We'll have a panel discussion on machinery, a panel discussion on sheep. We'll also do a roundup of the highlights of the week. Pop into the Agriland tent. We have a massive competition today, a €25,000 solar installation in association with Local Power Limited. All you have to do is pop into the tent and sign up for the competition. It's free. You don't need to do anything else. And coming into the winter months, everybody wants to save on their energy bills. A solar installation could be the way to go. We can also charge your phone, and please do try and get your name on the leaderboard for the virtual tractor racing. We have tractor simulators, so come on in. The queue is not too long, and you can try and get your name on the leaderboard. Stay tuned until 4 p.m. We'll bring you loads. Welcome to the Agriland Pavilion here. I'm back inside a little later of a start today with our live stream in association with UPMC and Pearson Milking Technology. We had a few gremlins in the system. They always turn up on the Thursday of ploughing, but they're gone. We got rid of them. We had exterminators in, and I'm joined on the live panel couch now by Minister of State with responsibility for research and development, farm safety and new market development, Martin Hayden. Minister, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Dad.
Firstly, I better get this out of the way because we've had a lot of topics of discussion. We've had a lot of your party colleagues in over the last couple of days on live panel discussions, and we've talked about this, and it seems to be on the back of a decision made in relation to nitrates derogation in Europe this week. Is there a bit of a disconnect at the minute between the two coalition partners, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, or possibly, to be more specific, between Leo Varadkar and Charlie McConalogue?
No, and I'm glad you asked me because, you know, I've been asked this a couple of times on media, and we are very much at one in terms of the importance of the nitrates derogation for our Irish farmers. There's a very specific reason we get that derogation. I can go into that in a minute, and we want to fight to defend it because we know how important it is, not just to the 7,300 farmers that have it, but to the overall rural economy. Obviously that's based on water quality. We have work to do in that area. Minister McConalogue has been, working really closely with the Commission and with the Commissioner in terms of that derogation, in terms of the midterm review, and with one eye on making sure that when this derogation ends at the end of 2025, that we're in a strong position to renegotiate a new one. We met the IFA at the Fine Gael Thinking the same way Fianna Fáil did on the Monday. We did it last Friday down in Limerick. President Tim Cullinan had one clear ask, that the Taoiseach would write to the Commissioner, invite him to Ireland, which was a very fair ask, a reasonable ask in the context of the importance of derogation. And I spoke to Charlie straight after the meeting. He was very happy for that to be done because Taoiseach's letter was complemented Charlie's invitation that had issued also to the Commissioner. And then when Charlie met the Commissioner last Monday, he was able to reiterate that that invitation was coming from the Taoiseach as well. And the Commissioner told Charlie that he would be happy to accept those invitations from Charlie and Leo and to come and to visit. And that is ultimately what's really important for farmers, that not just the Commissioner, because commissioners, like politicians, come and go, but the officials around him will be the ones that will be in place when we're renegotiating, needing an extension and getting another derogation. And them coming to to meet Irish farmers directly, because the IFA had a female farmer at that meeting last Friday who told the story better than anybody could about the impact on her farming unit that she runs with her father, and how, you know, potentially one of those incomes will come under so much pressure that she may have to move off the farm. And that, to me, highlighted the real challenge here. If we lose some of those jobs off the farms, and if it's the younger farmer that moves away, the younger farmer is going to adopt the newer technology and innovations and modern practices quicker, and avail of those grant opportunities that we're providing through the department to support that. So they're the type of real life scenarios you want the Commissioner and his officials to hear. We want to stand them in a field, show them some of the river catchments like in Castledockrell in Wexford or in Timoleague in Cork, the amazing work that's been carried out by farmers in conjunction with Teagasc, and to show how our pasture-based system is very different to the European model and why we need to protect this derogation into the future.
But Minister, do you think that that will make a difference? I'm sure it will certainly feed into, you know, the overall discussion in relation to the derogation from 2025 onwards. But the bottom line will be the European Commission will go on the water quality data. So regardless of a dairy farmer losing some of their income and regardless of jobs being lost in the sector, the bottom line will be if the water quality doesn't improve, we won't be continuing on with the derogation that we have.
Yes, and there's some frustration with farmers as to how the nitrates derogation is all about using stock and density to measure water quality. And we know that's a fairly crude instrument, and we know that stock and density alone, you need to have other interventions beyond that to move the dial on water quality. But farmers are adapting a lot of those practices. Look at the success of the ASSEP programme, where farmers are volunteering, over 2,500 farmers volunteering to get involved with advisors that we've set up in place to change and implement practices that they are doing on a voluntary basis. So I do think that tells a very important story, because if you're in Brussels and you're a commissioner and maybe a couple of NGOs come over and tell you from Ireland that we're terrible and everything we're doing is wrecking the environment, that'll paint a very specific picture in your mind. If you come over and see the reality of farmers adopting practices like low emission slurry spreading, widespread, and all the different practices that we are to reduce our emissions profile as well as our water quality, this is the Commissioner and the officials in charge of environment, DG Envy. It is really, really important that they get that sentiment and sense as well as the clear rules. And in terms of the parameters that are used beyond 2025, you know, ultimately, the politics of this is the Commissioner and his officials negotiate the deals and the terms, what they can live with, what can't live with. They don't sign off on it. The sign-off happens by all of the other member states, and that's a really important point to know. So the Commissioner will negotiate what he thinks the other member states could live with, and what would be a red flag for them, he would fight harder with that member state. But the politics of this is that we are one of a declining number of countries in Europe that has this derogation. We're down now to just 3 areas. Flanders will be gone by the end of this year. And Denmark have to decide if they're reapplying or not. Denmark's limit, by the way, is 230. They're not at 250, like parts of Ireland still are. So in that space, you know, the politics of this will be these countries who approved our derogations in the past had them themselves. Germany, Holland, they're gone now. They don't have them, and they will ask harder questions. So this is always going to be harder to get, but it's absolutely imperative to our system, and every opportunity we get. Minister McConalogue has been doing it for a long time, my officials, my department do it for a long time, but every single opportunity we get across the sphere to tell that story, and nobody better than farmers to tell that story themselves, is no harm.
And when are you expecting maybe, you know, your party leader, Leo Varadkar, to maybe get a response on that invitation by the Commissioner to come over? Are you optimistic it'll be in the short term?
Yeah, I'll be optimistic it's soon. The Commissioner indicated to Minister McConalogue on Monday that he will happily accept the invitation, so now it's just a matter of working out diary times, but hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later.
So, Minister, you've been a vocal advocate of improving farm safety, but agriculture remains one of the most dangerous sectors to work in. Is enough being done?
So it's an evolving process. I do feel that we are making progress in changing culture, but I'm really slow to say that, because the metric in which you measure success is statistics, but statistics are real lives, they're real communities. This year so far we've lost 7 people in workplace incidents on farms, in farm fatalities, 7 confirmed. There are a number of others under investigation by the HSA still, who are the statutory body in Ireland for calculating these things. That figure is lower than it would have been the 10-year average of the last 10 years, but I'm even slow to say that, because that's 7 families, 7 communities that have been devastated, and possibly more depending on how the categorisations go. But I do feel we're making progress in terms of that message cutting through about Irish farmers and their family members' attitude to risk. Because this is what it all comes down to. I'm a farmer myself, my wife, with 4 young kids on our farm in Kildare. Obviously, I have it scaled back considering what I do in the day job. But, you know, I know what it is. I lost my mother last year. Before that, I know what it was to have an elderly, retired farmer in front of that dangerous cow shaking a bucket in front of her because I wasn't there. I know what it is to have kids, to be encouraged them to play out the back where it's safe and not across the farmyard. And I know all the different dynamics that are there. But ultimately here, all of those can be excuses to identifying the risk and reducing it. And in every measure I'm taking, whether it's through the Farm Safe School programme, whether it's through dealing with teenagers in secondary school, whether our ag science students in 5th and 6th year, whether it's 3rd level students in Kildalton with the farm simulators, different elements, whether it's older farmers looking at issues like succession, and whether it's farmers who have ongoing investments on their farm through TAMS, having the farm safety measure in TAMS, having knowledge transfer and farm safety training being an integral part of that. I think we're getting to the point where the conversation is, which is what my ambition was 3 years ago when I became minister. Farm safety isn't this thing we talk about just over here. It's integral to everything we do. And ultimately, if we plan more, if we identify the risk in every job we undertake, and if we think in 2 weeks' time we've calving season, in 2 weeks' time we've silage season, in 2 weeks' time we're cutting corn, what is all the most dangerous things that's going to be happening in the yard or at that time? So for calving season next year, we want farmers thinking now, I don't really have a proper calving gate. My structure's not right. There's a TAMS grant there that I can apply for to invest in that. I should do that. You know, sometimes it's a broken manhole cover, sometimes a broken light in the yard heading into the winter. But if we identify the hazards and we address them and move away from this attitude that near misses as, sure, that's the thing that we just accept in life, and get to that point where we're thinking about the hazards more and addressing them, then I think we'll get into a place, I know statistically it's proven, we will get to a place where those number of fatal incidents and the number of life-changing injuries and the number of 4,500 injuries that happen on farms every year, many of which need hospitalisation, that we can reduce that number down. Statistically, it's proven. If we reduce the near misses, we will reduce all those numbers.
And we know how to, I suppose, improve farm safety, but what would you say, as the Minister for Farm Safety, is the biggest challenge to reducing those farm deaths or communicating that message? What's the biggest challenge in getting that message out there? I
think the biggest challenge is the human thing. I work with partners like the Embrace charity, Norma and Brian Rowan, who do great work there out of Abbey Leaks, who deal with bereaved families and that. And the thing that strikes me going to the Embrace service, ecumenical service every June, is that you meet victims' families, and no one ever thought it would happen to them.
Yeah.
So I think that's our biggest challenge. It's actually proven as well that there's a greater adoption of farm safety measures in farms that are in communities that have had a loss of a life through farm safety incidents. We can't wait for every community to suffer that, to have that impact. We need to impact it beforehand. But the biggest challenge is every farmer here at the Plough Match this week realising that in a split second that incident could happen to them or their loved ones, and that they need to act now to avoid that happening. And that's a challenge, but it's an ongoing challenge. But I work with a range of partners across agriculture to help drive home that message at every given opportunity.
And just finally, to stay on the point of farm safety, we have new quad bike legislation coming in November. How enforceable do you think that will be? Or how will it be adopted by the farming community?
It absolutely will. Look, we have cross-compliance checks, we have different measures where farmers are checked to see how they're doing things. It's a change of culture. It's a very hard thing to bring in when people are used to having a quad without a helmet, having a quad without having had training for it. But we've lost a lot of lives on quad bikes. They're a very dangerous piece of equipment. You have to be quite agile to do it. There's the training is really important as to how you navigate hills. They're easily turned over to a high centre of gravity. So to learn those measures is really, really important. The vast majority of fatalities and serious injuries that have happened on quad bikes have involved head injuries. So the helmet is so important. And what I did this summer was I funded the initiative to encourage farmers to apply for the grant, as well as for PTO covers, also for helmets on quads, to raise awareness, but also to take away that cost element of the helmet for a quad bike. This is a change.
There's really no excuse then. I mean, they're really
there is
being
no
granted.
Excuse,
yeah.
but this ultimately is a change of culture.
Yeah.
And farmers are going to have to get used to that this is a very dangerous piece of equipment and one that can't be taken for granted, that we all need to take that training on. And in a few years' time, we'll look back and see, God, that's just general practice now. But changing behaviour and changing culture is always difficult, but it's not a reason for not doing it.
Absolutely. Moving now to your new market development side of your portfolio, can I ask what's the latest in relation to sheep meat access in the US market?
Yeah, look, it's an area, sheep farmers have been having a very difficult year, and around market access issues, obviously I go on trade missions, I visit different countries. I was in Washington recently in America dealing with the officials out there, and while we gained access over a year ago, we still haven't got any sheep meat in there.
Exactly.
Because of the ongoing negotiations, and it's tedious, it's slow, and we want to clear those blockages. I work closely with Borbia, work closely with industry and processors, and my officials are dealing directly with USDA in terms of the finer details of what the US needs from their perspective. So there is set criteria there where the facility has to be to the spec that the US wants. That is different than the specifications from other markets. So then there's talk of whether you have a US only day for the factory, what's processed that day will be only for the US market. There's ways around trying to figure this out and to get around those challenges. Obviously, you need to make sure there's enough market there that it's worth the processor's while to have a day set alone for that. Processors are telling us that would work. So it's to try and make something like that happen, to get that flexibility in there, but to get that product moving. Because ultimately here, there is price pressure on sheep farmers. I think most of the sheep farmers' problems at the minute relate more to the input costs as well. Obviously, the high cost of fertiliser earlier in the year has had a big impact, but their margins have greatly reduced. So gaining new markets, I'm not saying any one market will change the world for them, but it's the critical mass of markets that we have and reduce our dependency on the UK market because of the trade deals they're doing with places like New Zealand and Australia. That is the medium-term risk for Irish farmers, not just sheep farmers, beef farmers as well, and dairy. That is the smart play. So we continue to work very closely with USDA, and hopefully we'll have progress on that very, very soon.
Yeah, because I have met a lot of sheep farmers here in the Agriland tent over the ploughing, and we had up the schedule and that you would be coming on our live panel discussion, and a lot of them are saying, like, are we going to be coming to you, Stella, at the ploughing again next year, going, will you ask them, is there any update on the US sheep meat access? Will it take another year? How soon could we actually see sheep meat?
You really hope not. I'm very slow to put a timeline on it because it's not all within our gift. Obviously, you're dealing with another country. They have to be happy. But from our perspective, the amount of work that goes into gaining access, it's unusual then that so long after gaining that access, you still wouldn't have product in there. And a lot of that conversation is between processors and producers as well, that the state is a step removed back from. So we cleared the broad governmental piece, if you like, and Borbia work really closely with the processors to try and get the next piece moved on, but we help in any way we can. So I can't give you a timeline, but I would really hope that we'd be talking about all the sheep meat we're selling in the USA this time next year and not still trying to get access.
It's been an up and down year, I suppose, for sheep, an up and down year for milk, an up and down year for beef. But what new markets are in the pipeline? Where could we be going in the short term in terms of access?
So I suppose if you look at Food Vision 2030, which is our 10-year strategy about prioritising key markets, and we have them, myself, Minister McConaughey, continue to visit those key markets. We'll be in Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand in November. Minister McConaughey is just back from Nigeria. And earlier this year, I took the opportunity out in South Korea for St. Patrick's Day. While that wasn't an agricultural trade mission, beef access in South Korea is something we're looking to move on. It is stuck at the political stage there and making progress on that. And Taoiseach will be out there later this year as well, so he's going to follow up on my efforts in that regard. So we have a lot of key markets depending on the commodity, whether it's the beef, sheep, or dairy produce that you want to get in there. Obviously, alcohol is a growing element, and that's very important for the tillage sector too. But depending on the commodity and where you're looking at, we obviously gained beef access to China. So
I think that has been a little bit slower to take off than maybe beef farmers are hoping for. Yeah.
It has, and part of that is where the Chinese economy is at. But I was going to make the point about beef access to China being a good example, that we worked for those 2.5 years really hard dealing with the GAC in China, the General Affairs Committee that make the decisions around trade. You get your access back. Straight away, I was on a plane over to Hainan, a big trade expo that was on down there. Mr. McConaughey was in Shanghai following that. So we delve into that market to try and support Irish companies then to make those connections with their distributors to get back in. So gaining market access, which is a lot of the work of trade missions, is the slow, tedious piece. And then the next piece is supporting Irish industry, Irish food companies and Borbia on the efforts they're making. Because if you're in markets, particularly in Asia, government backing carries a lot more weight. So over there where the different political systems, particularly in Asia, having a government minister opens doors to meetings for companies. So if we go on a trade mission with 30 or 40 Irish food companies, we can get a meeting with their minister, then all of their companies will come because their minister is there, and then that opens the door for ours. So it's a slow process, but it's an ongoing process. And as I say, if you look at our dependency on the UK market, the real move, and the reason I've been given specific focus on new market development, is that we have to reduce our dependency on the UK market. It pays well, it's very close to us, it'll always be a very important market to us, but as they open their doors to the likes of significant trade deals with Australia, New Zealand and others, that is a very big potential impact on Irish beef prices, sheep prices, dairy products. So these other markets, while I'm not saying any single one of them is going to change the world, it's the critical mass of them, and it's the higher value ones. And a lot of the work I do, I'll be in a Nuga food fair in Germany in October, one of the biggest food fairs in the world. And half of my work at that time out there will be on the existing markets we have, looking to maintain the relationships, grow the relationships, build the products and the market access space that we have there. So where we have access, we look to grow the range of products that are in there and the value of that. You always want the dial to be increasing in terms of value. So if you take somewhere like Japan, where they took beef tongue, where a lot of countries wouldn't have much interest in that. It's a delicacy in Japan. It's a very important market there. We continue to work on that market and get access for minced beef. Something that gives us the opportunity to get Irish beef into burgers that are sold in Japan. Something we continue to work on in that area.
And finally, Minister Hayden, what can farming communities expect in Budget 2024?
So, look, I suppose if you look at the cycle in agriculture, we have our new CAP, we have a lot of our schemes. The big pressure on our department now is to get those computer systems all finalised, get the payments out as quickly as possible, and that's been huge pressure this year because we also have the new acre scheme. We've 46,000 farmers where we expected 30,000. So there's a lot of pressure on the system, and getting those schemes all there in place means that the budget is an annual budget. We obviously needed to secure the overall budget for the CAP, which we did with the co-financing of the Exchequer to that. But the budget itself, I've just been at a meeting with Minister Paschal Donoghue, who is here today, and myself and Charlie McConalogue will work closely with Paschal as Minister for Public Expenditure, as well as Michael McGrath, and we'll try and get the best deal possible for Irish agriculture, as Minister Hackett will as well, ahead of the budget on the 10th of October.
Minister Martin Hayden, thank you very much for joining us on our live panel discussion on the Agriland live stream today. We're going to take a break now. It's getting a little bit cloudy, but before the rain comes down, because I think we might have a shower, we're going to head back out to the ploughing site because the Agriland team are still out and about.
We're delighted to be joined on the stage by two members of the team from UPMC, and of course UPMC are our partners here on the live stream for the National Ploughing Championships in Ratheniska. First up, joining us on stage is Jane Campbell, and Jane is a physio manager with UPMC in Aut Even in Kilkenny. Jane, you're very welcome. And we're also joined by Elaine Rogan, and Elaine is a health and performance coach, and she's involved with UPMC in Setu in Waterford, and she's involved with sports medicine there. Ladies, you're very, very welcome. Look, there's a lot of walking going around the site, a lot of exercise. You'll be delighted we're all very active this week at least.
Yeah, there's some great distances even on the way in from the car parks. I was saying I'll get my steps in.
Yeah, there's definitely 10,000 plus going on over these few days, that's for sure. Look, I suppose, Jane, I'll start with yourself as a physiotherapist with UPMC. Tell us a little bit about the offering that UPMC has when it comes to physiotherapy services.
So within we have a wide range from don't be put off by the name sports medicine. We have offerings basically for anybody with any sort of musculoskeletal conditions, problems. They don't always have to be an injury per se. They can be just something that just crept up on people. So we do a wide range from people who have had an actual accident and an injury who want to come in, to people who maybe have had this injury that just crept up on them. And we also offer classes, which Elaine will talk a little bit more about later. We also do post-op rehabilitation. So if somebody has had an operation in the hospital, then they can come back to us for their rehab afterwards. And many of those are in individual sessions or group sessions.
Yeah, and I suppose the role of a physiotherapist when you're talking about rehabilitation, whether it's an injury or post-surgery, I suppose it's a crucial part of getting people back to a sense of normality or their normal selves.
Yeah, and you know, many of the surgeons will say, I've done my bit now to the patient, now it's over to you and the physios to get you back to your place of work or get back to your full health after that. So there's a great partnership between the patients and the physios and the surgeon. So we're all in it together, to excuse the pun there.
Yeah, and is there, I suppose, a diligence needed then when the exercisers are given that they have to be, you know?
They have to be done, because really if you're going to go to the trouble of going through a surgery, you really have to be prepared to do the work afterwards. And it's no more than, you know, working on a farm. Things don't just happen by accident. You actually have to put the effort in.
Yeah, and I mean, is it a one-to-one service, obviously, initially, and it broadens out then potentially?
Yeah, so it depends. So people might come in to us whether they decide to come in themselves, so we don't need a referral necessarily for them to come in, or they might be referred by their GP or their consultant. We do a one-to-one session with them. It might be that then they belong in a class setting, or it might be that they belong in a series of individual sessions. It just depends on the condition itself.
Yeah, and look, we're here at the National Ploughing Championships. Farming is an incredibly physical, demanding job. I'm sure you see a lot of farmers and farm family members coming into you as well.
Well, I would say probably 75% of the people I see are farmers, so it's either post-surgery or coming in, and I always joke it's usually not the farmer themselves who makes the first phone call. It's the family member, it's a wife, it's a daughter, it's a son, it's somebody else who's pushing them in the door to us to try and get something sorted. And it's far better to come in sooner rather than later. Because you can nip something in the bud quite easily rather than maybe ending on a surgical pathway where you're months out.
Yeah, and is there a fear factor, you know, when it comes to that? I think a lot of us, if we've an ache or a pain, we're like, oh, it'll go away, and you just keep sweeping it under the carpet.
I think it's the same. Now, I wouldn't treat a farmer any different to an athlete. There's always a fear that the physio is going to say you have to stop. And for the most part, we don't say you have to stop. What we're saying is you have to modify your activity. So if you're doing something, there's ways around it. Like you said, farming's very physical, which is wonderful because farmers end up being much fitter than someone who sits at a desk all day. Yeah. You can modify what they're doing so you're avoiding the aggravating factor slightly. You know, there are other ways of doing it.
Yeah, so it's not that you're going to have to stop entirely, because farmers aren't great at putting the feet up, that's for sure.
No.
You obviously deal with the area of oncology as well, I understand, and unfortunately cancer is something that affects so many households.
Absolutely. So we have our XL class that after their treatments that they would come and join then after that. So I suppose it's probably such a long treatment that they've gone through. So at that stage, they want to get back, they want to get fit, and they want to get back out to their normal activities. So it's a class, it's kind of everybody is coming into it from different areas and different purposes. Just in Waterford, the oncology department is quite big, so we have a lot of referrals in there from the hospital and from GPs as well. So we have the class in Kilkenny as well, looking after the two XL sites as well. So in that class, that it's kind of helping them gain a bit of confidence like that, get a little bit fitter and stronger again.
And I was going to say, in the class environment as well, people obviously feed off each other, and you've that shared experience as well, because maybe your family member might not understand what you're going through.
Absolutely, and I think that's the biggest thing I see, that you know, it's only an hour exercise, but an hour later they're still having a cup of coffee together and chatting. Yeah. And like it's those times that they've told me that that's what gains more confidence. Yeah. They're nervous coming into a class environment. They may be people that never have stepped in a gym environment or an exercise environment before. Yeah. But then it's meeting somebody else that they might have gone through it a year ago and said, look, it gets better. You know, trust in the process, and you'll each day you'll get a little bit better. And then it's hearing that, then they'll go home and then they'll feel, do you know what, I can probably take on a little bit more then.
Yeah, and Jane, I suppose, you know, Emily was mentioning like osteoarthritis and all these things. Like, I suppose, are they preventable? Is it kind of genetic? Is there ways that we can mind ourselves a little bit better? I'm going to use your I suppose, professional expertise a little bit to give viewers, I suppose, some helpful tips that might help them.
I suppose the first thing about osteoarthritis is it isn't inevitable that you're going to get progressively worse and worse with it. And if you have, lots of people are walking around with osteoarthritis who don't even know they have it, okay? you haven't worn out the joints. Some of it's genetics, some of it is old injuries. But when you have it, what you want to do is really just increase your capacity, increase your strength. Elaine mentioned, build up the muscles around the joint. You will inevitably go through flares of your osteoarthritis, but it's understanding that that's a flare. It's not going to last forever. Yeah. You might need to take some pain relief to get it to calm down. You might need to back off a little bit, but if you're strong enough, you can actually overcome that. Understanding it and being strong enough to deal with it.
What would be your, I suppose, couple of tips that, wellness tips that we could all kind of take on board and mind ourselves a little bit more?
I think movement is key.
Yeah.
Just keeping moving and like that, trying to keep active. And as we were saying about the steps today, it's those, might be a hard target to reach 10,000 steps, but find an achievable target for yourself and just build from there. And like that, the more fitter we can keep our heart health as well, then it's going to inevitably help everything else along the way.
Yeah, would you agree, Jane, that's the movement is,
Absolutely,
yeah.
And that's why I say actually in the farming community, people are actually quite lucky because the nature of their job is moving, and I know people are fearful of am I wearing myself out? You're actually not. You're strengthening, you're increasing. So if you do get a niggle in a joint, get it sorted. You're in a better position than someone sitting at a desk. Yeah. So it's very important to just nip it in the bud.
Yeah, and to use the environment. And I suppose any kind of easy, demonstration exercise that you can show us. Well, what's a good common exercise that you might give somebody, Emily? Is there?
I think probably our sit to stand or your squat is the easiest.
Yeah.
Like that, we do it so much for our daily life, just getting it down and up and off a chair. Sometimes that is a difficult movement, but like that, pop a couple of cushions underneath the chair as well, and then it makes it a little bit easier. So every time you get up off the chair, do 10.
Yeah, so it's kind of being more conscious of how you move, maybe to protect yourself and to help yourself. And I suppose through the classes and through the physiotherapy service, people can learn how to do that as well.
And I think that's what we both probably try to do, is when somebody is in and let's say they've come from farming or they've come from a certain background, we try and relate the exercise to something they're doing. So for example, sit to stand, you get up after your cup of tea, you're getting up. If it's a case of we're doing lunges as another exercise and we're holding weights, you could be holding 2 buckets of something, so you just try and relate it to a task that might be happening in day-to-day life. Climbing up on a tractor with your bad leg, those sort of things.
Yeah. And look, I suppose it's to prevent the injuries, and that's what you're trying to do as well. Unfortunately, some of the people that you're seeing have suffered an injury, but if we can kind of get in there ahead of time, as you said, with the classes and the good health advice as well, and I think we could all take it on board, to be honest. Definitely, yeah. But ladies, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
I suppose if people want to find out more, to look up UPMC, and the whole suite of services is available there, and they can join your classes, they can talk to yourself, Jane, as a physio as well, and get some advice.
If they want to come and chat to us today, I think up it's row 43, and we'd be happy to talk to people there.
Absolutely. You'll have us all in with our aches and pains. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us here in the Agriland tent, and to UPMC as well for being our live stream partner here at the National Ploughing Championships.
Welcome back to the Agriland Pavilion here at the National Ploughing Championships in Ratheniska in County Laois. I'm back on the live panel discussion now with a beef panel today. So I am joined by Pierce Kelly, the head of dry stock with Teagasc, Joe Burke, the meat and livestock senior manager with Borbia, and of course our own Breffney O'Brien, our Agriland technical beef writer, to talk all about things beef, which many farmers have been coming in asking us questions over the last couple of days here at the ploughing site. Pierce Kelly, I'll come to you first. Beef prices on the up again, we'll say at the minute in recent weeks, but you couldn't really say that beef farmers have had a great year overall, or like break-even prices in some scenarios are down on 2022. It's been a bit inconsistent.
Yeah, listen, it's kind of been one of those years where it's kind of been up and down. The weather, I suppose, has been a tough year at the start of the year. Cattle were out very early in February. We thought this could be the start of a very early spring. Unfortunately, it was the opposite. It was kind of mid-late April before people got out, which added costs to beef farmers. Then we moved into June. Over in the eastern half of the country, we started to get worried at that stage that we were heading into a drought, and even some people were feeding silage at that stage, silage that was only made a couple of weeks. And then sure, we all saw what happened in July and August. So from a cost point of view, and then we are where we are at the moment. It's a very early winter on some farms. You go down to parts of the country, down Limerick, down the west and that, talking about housing cattle at the moment, and a long winter. I suppose on the positive side, we saw fertiliser compared to 2022 did come down in price. So and there's a little bit less being used as well, as people kind of are teetering around with using less inputs. We see for the winter meal prices in the northern half of the country seem to be dropping, not so much in the southern half of the country. We probably expect that probably from about November onwards to see maybe meal prices in the southern half of the country dropping a little bit more as well. So they're the positives. Beef price, Joe can talk about that I suppose, but I mean beef price, it's the big problem with beef price was it dropped earlier than we expected it to. We were expecting that kind of late June, early July, but it kind of came a month, 6 weeks earlier. So yeah, you're right, Stella. It's been an up and down year.
Up and down, yeah.
But overall, probably not too bad a year.
Yeah. Joe Burke, from Borbia's perspective, you might give us an outline kind of what beef kill numbers as we head towards the end of the year and heading in towards the first couple of months of next year. What are they looking like at the minute?
Yeah, no problem. I suppose, and Pierce touched on the price situation, and you might be forgiven for thinking that maybe that prices were even down on last year's levels on average, but in fact they're up 7% for the year to date. And that probably is just a feature of the fact that prices were strong up until May. As Pierce said, come mid-May, late May, it started to drop. And really, we're back 60 cents and more in cases, depending on the class of animals since then. So all of that 7% is all as a result of that kind of a strong start to the year. We've seen base prices then since that slip, even back as far as 460. Probably recovering 5-10 cent in the last couple of weeks again, and even a bit more being paid since then. So certainly the signs of a bit more positivity, a bit more optimism there. Markets are a bit better as well too in terms of the UK and continental European prices. So hopefully we can get back up into a more positive situation than we see them at the moment. But in terms of supply,
and the factors that drove that early drop, I suppose, in May, like Pierce mentioned a couple there, but
yeah, really, I suppose it was demand driven more than anything else. Supply wise, so far this year we've killed 40,000 less cattle. That overall in comparison to this time last year, and there's no sign of any recovery coming anytime soon either. Cattle are slow enough to finish, and I suppose where we normally might be seeing a few younger cattle coming through from now to the end of the year in previous years, I suppose people following some of the blueprints maybe the Teagasc and others have developed, finishing cattle at a young age, 19 and 20 months. That probably is likely to be a lesser feature this year because, as Pierce touched on there, the weather-related challenges, cattle didn't just thrive as well on many farms as ideally we would have liked them to. But it was mainly demand-driven that demand for forequarter beef especially declined significantly in comparison to last year. And that was a reflection of, well, your quick service restaurant channels, your likes of McDonald's and Burger King, while they have increased their costs or they've pushed on their higher costs onto consumers, and now be it your burger meals or your different options there are a good lot more expensive than they were going back a few years ago. So where we had really, really, really strong engagement with that category, with those restaurants and those items, for the last few years since COVID, since lockdown, it did meet a bit of resistance there. And similarly, even those same items, be it burgers or mince, even at retail, at supermarket level, where the price had been going up in the last couple of years, just a bit more challenging, particularly around Europe. UK, not quite as bad. Our exports to the UK are probably up about 5% on the same period last year, but exports to continental Europe are down. And that's mainly reflecting that kind of difficulty that we've seen over the summer months. Not necessarily just related to the higher priced cuts, even those four-quarter cuts that had been commanding really strong prices. Some of that product had to be frozen, I suppose, during the summer in the anticipation that it would sell a bit better now going into the autumn months. It's only in the last few weeks that we've seen those those values, those prices for, be it manufacturing beef or some other lower price cuts, start to steady and start to recover a bit.
Breffney, you've been chatting to an awful lot of beef farmers, beef breeders, factory agents, everything over the last couple of days this week in terms of what is on their mind. What are the biggest issues that farmers are talking about at the minute, beef farmers?
Yeah, Stella, I suppose there's three main issues that I see farmers in the beef sector talking about at the ploughing this year. I suppose weather, trade, and then scheme dates and deadlines, of course, is another one that a lot of guys are checking up on. So I suppose as regards to the weather, challenges, or there's been a lot of challenges with weather conditions this year. We had a really dry month of June and things were really starting to burn up. And then into July and August, obviously, we've had significant rainfall. At this time of the year, I suppose, as you know, things can change pretty fast with weather conditions, and a lot of areas across the country have had fairly heavy rainfall. It's caused issues with guys, farmers maybe trying to get reseeds done, things like that. And I suppose, as Joe and Pierce mentioned, that some farmers are considering housing stock at the minute. Weather also seems to have had an impact this year on livestock performance. So talking to factory agents, they've noted that carcass weights are down slightly. Maybe they were expecting larger numbers of cattle to come available at this time of the year. They seem to have been slightly delayed. I suppose the thing that remains to be seen with regards supplies is whether farmers will push these cattle on and will have them, I suppose, at the end of the year in November or December, or whether they'll be housed and fed over the winter, and whether they'll come available in February or March. That remains to be seen. And then in relation to the suckler farmers, and of course, well, all farmers, the scheme dates and deadlines, I suppose, you have a lot of farmers calling into the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine stand there, checking up, I suppose, to make sure everything is in order and they have a good service available there.
Pierce, I'll come back to you. Breffney just mentioned there a couple of the schemes and things like that. The National Beef Welfare Scheme was obviously opened up as well as another avenue of funding, I suppose, for beef farmers. Now, as with all schemes, there's a bit of criticism of certain elements of that in terms of the IBR testing and that. But how is Teagasc engaging with beef farmers in terms of trying to get them signed up to these schemes, getting their payments? We know there's a delay. What are farmers giving you in terms of feedback?
Yeah, so as you say, Stella, there's a little bit, I suppose, negativity around the National Beef Welfare Scheme, and I suppose it's probably a little bit of surprise in terms of it's something different in terms of the IBR. The meal feeding, everybody, when that came out, there was a little bit of criticism of that. But the IBR one is one that, it's not going to cost the farmer anything. It's an extra payment. The payment is going to cover the full cost of the IBR. And as an industry, we're going to have to face up to the problem that is IBR, because we're talking about markets there a second ago. We don't have a national IBR program, and this is kind of dipping your toe in the water to say, well, what would a national IBR program maybe look like? Because if we don't get a national IBR program off the ground pretty soon, it could actually shut down all of our live exports, because a lot of the countries we're selling stock into are developing IBR programs, which means they can't take in certain categories of stock if you don't have a program. So I'd say, what we'd be encouraging farmers on the welfare scheme is sign up, join, talk to your vet about it, and if it does nothing else, it's going to tell you where your farm is from an IBR status, and you might be pleasantly surprised that your herd has absolutely no IBR animals shown up in it, and that you can then take measures to continue to make sure that is the case. Or it may show up that, there is an issue there, and what are your options then to reduce IBR? Because what we've seen through a lot of our demonstration farm programs over the years, and we actually did this snapshot with AHI on our Better Beef program a number of years ago. We did it on about 29 farms, and the feedback we got from the farmers who did the pilot, if you like, IBR program back 4 or 5 5 years ago is the 50 or 60%, I can't remember the exact figure, farms that had shown up that they had some level of IBR, some of them had quite a bit. When they actually got rid of it, it was like turning a light off overnight in terms of the reduction in antibiotics that those farms used. So yes, there is a little bit of resistance when something new comes in. There's a cost, and people say, oh yeah, listen, that's only for the vets and the labs to make money. But that's not the case. This is going to be hugely beneficial to the farmers who do identify that they have maybe a number of animals that have IBR. They identify that, they reduce the IBR in the herd. Long term, it's going to have a really beneficial impact on the farm. The other scheme that I suppose we're a little bit disappointed on the suckler side that we're not seeing a huge uptake on is the National Genotyping Programme.
Yeah.
So there's only a few thousand suckler herds signed up to that. And that's
where's the resistance there, Pierce?
It's not. I'm just talking to ICBF even there this morning. It's hard to know, and I wouldn't say it's a resistance, Stella. I'd say what is it? It's a lack of awareness. So we had an open day down in Kildalton a couple of weeks ago, and we had ICBF there, and they signed up a number of people on the day who, when they explained what the National Genotyping Programme was, they immediately said, "Oh, sure, that's a no-brainer." So take for argument's sake a farmer who's in the new skep, the new suckler. So if they don't sign up to the National Genotyping Programme, they're going to have to wait until next summer to get the genotyping tags sent out to them to tag their calves. Whereas if they're in the National Genotyping Programme, they'll be able to tag them at birth. And that's a huge cost saving and time saving, big time saver, to be able to register the calves at birth. So I'd encourage all beef farmers, especially suckler farmers who are in skep, we're going to have to genotype the majority of our calves anyway, to join the genotyping programme, and they get the tags at birth.
That's very interesting. I'm going to move just to Joe quickly on a little bit out of your scope, Joe, but seeing as I have you now from Borbia, about, I suppose, the beef market in China. It was great news. It was great to get into China. It took long enough to get in, but probably maybe a little underwhelming to start off, a bit of a slow start in terms of getting the beef over there and their demand for it.
Yeah, and Stella, I suppose when the market opened up first, going back late 2018, early 2019, the potential then was really, really strong, and we did see exporters respond to that. And our exports, when we had access there at that time, again, early 2020 as well, exports, for the first half of that year were really encouraging. The market was strong. Again, a lot of four-quarter beef was put in there. And had it been open for the full year, we'd have gotten, over 20,000 tonnes, I think, in there. Unfortunately, it closed then through no fault of anyone's, really. It was a case of non-typical BSE or atypical BSE, which the Chinese authorities kind of responded to and reacted to. Unfortunately, fast forward a couple of years after we get back in again at the beginning of this year, it's a different market altogether than it was, that their overall import demand is down. Prices are not what they were over there, and they're buying much cheaper product from mainly Australia and even some from South America as well. So, it's just while the market is there and it's open, and some of the processors are still sending product there, but it would be a couple of cuts. It wouldn't be, a big, for example, cut like flank, or it wouldn't be, some of the bigger cuts that come from the shoulder of the animal. It tends to be smaller, just lighter individual pieces. So it's really only maybe a couple of kilos even from a carcass that might end up going to China at the moment. So hence the volumes to date this year have been very low. To be honest, in the short term anyway, we don't see a big recovery. A little bit similar on the pig meat side as well, that, pig meat prices are really strong. That's mainly been driven by a scarcity of pig meat in Europe, and prices, in Germany and elsewhere in Europe have risen. Our exports to China, they're down on other years as well, similarly with regard to pig meat, that it's actually other countries, other markets that are driving that strong price performance and export performance.
And Joe, I'll just touch then on the PGI for Irish grass-fed beef. Now, I spoke to your colleague Mark Zegan Borbia recently about it. And sometimes when applications go into Europe like this, and it sounds like a lot of paperwork and a lot of marketing and everything, and beef farmers, at home in their shed, don't understand what it'll mean for them. If we get this, I think now a decision will be made in the next couple of weeks. If we get status of a PGI for Irish grass-fed beef, What will that mean to the beef farmer on the street or on the field, as the case may be?
Yeah, and Stella, so we're at the very, very final stage. You know, we've been knocking away at this, I suppose, again, similarly for 2.5 years. There have been a few hiccups and a few stumbles along the way. Again, you know, not to dwell on it or to blame anyone. Obviously, everyone is entitled to, you know, their opinion and to be consulted and to voice their views on it. But thankfully, we're at our final consultation phase now within the European Commission, and they'll be due to basically close that consultation phase around the end of November. And then, again, based on our previous experience, we don't anticipate that there will be any major contention or any issues after that. And very soon after that, we expect that we'll be granted this PGI status. We'll be able to go out and basically give Irish grass-fed beef its due recognition in terms of being able to give it this PGI label. That's basically a certificate of excellence to some degree. It's one that's very well recognized in a lot of countries. You don't see that many PGIs on shelves or you know, even referred to here in Ireland. But in the likes of Italy, France, Spain, likes of those markets, it's something that's really, really well understood and acknowledged, and consumers are familiar with it and they know it, and they pay a price premium for it, which is ultimately where we want to get to. Approximately half of our beef exports go to continental Europe, so certainly in those markets we're going to be really pushing this hard, along with the key exporters. Obviously, Bord Bia will be using it in marketing, and then the processors themselves, hopefully, in their relationships and conversations with customers, they'll be leveraging it in order to get it onto packs, get it onto supermarket shelves, and again, in tandem with that, we'll be, you know, giving it the appropriate advertising and promotion and marketing and so on. So, like, PGIs, they vary greatly, you know, from, you know, champagne and prosecco to, you know, things like cheese and Parma ham. But in each case, they are associated with a premium product. And, you know, in each case as well, they're associated with a premium price. So that's not to say that every kilo of beef that comes from a carcass is going to end up being sold as, you know, under that PGI and at a premium price. But certainly the intention, and all along our communications around this, was to deliver to farmers, you know, more sustainable returns from the marketplace. And, you know, sure, how will we identify the animals? It's using our data that we have coming through the quality assurance system that farmers have been engaging with, thankfully, in really, you know, strong numbers for a number of years. We have a grass-fed standard, so that's basically confirming what we already know, that the vast majority of farmers employ a very grass-based system, using grazed grass and ensiled grass or silage to the highest degree, complemented with, you know, it's not all that. There is some concentrate feed fed as well, and that's okay. That can make up to 10% of their diet during their lifetime, and the vast majority of, you know, steers and heifers will meet those requirements. So we don't expect that this is going to lock out, or, you know, that farmers are going to be looking at their neighbours and saying, you know, they're in but I'm out. It'll be, you know, very inclusive. The vast majority of those steers and heifers will qualify for it.
Finally, Breffney, I might just quickly touch on, for example, programs. Now, I know you do a lot of work with the Advantage Beef program and what farmers are doing to improve. The word sustainability was mentioned by Joe there, maybe in an economic sense, but we also are trying to be environmentally sustainable. What sort of, do you think that there is a bit of a culture change in beef farming now, where you know, there is better breeding, there's more cognizance of the environmental footprint of agriculture now, and farmers are taking action in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely, Stella. And I suppose one thing that's really positive to see now is that it's really been industry-led over the last number of years. We're seeing a number of the processors bring out various different sustainability schemes and offering farmers some sort of a financial incentive for being involved in these schemes. A lot of the results that's coming from these schemes are also showing, these sustainability schemes are also showing that the more environmentally sustainable cattle are also the more economically sustainable cattle, because I suppose the lower slaughter age, the better performance, and the better daily live weight gain over the course of their life. So yeah, I think farmers are really taking up the measures, and in cases where it's bringing about benefits to them and their enterprise.
We're just running out of time there on our beef panel discussion, so I'm going to have to wrap it up, but I very much want to thank our panellists, our own Breffney O'Brien, technical beef writer with Agriland, Joe Burke, who's Meat and Livestock Senior Manager with Borbia, and of course Pierce Kelly, Head of Dry Stock with Teagasc. We will head back out to the ploughing site now, to the Agriland team, but do stay tuned because we've more live panel discussions coming up here from the Agriland Pavilion.
So I'm chatting here to Cathal Summers, a Teagasc advisor with the ASAP or ASAP programme. So Cathal, I suppose the fundamental question to you is, what is ASAP?
Yeah, so ASAP stands for the Agriculture Sustainability Support and Advisory Programme, and it's a programme that was set up in 2019 where the dairy industry came together with Teagasc, working in collaboration where we work together with farmers in a free, confidential and voluntary service to try and reduce nutrient loss off farms. And what we do is we work with farmers. There's a number of Teagasc advisors and a number of co-op advisors from the different areas across the country. We work in about 190 areas across the country where water quality is seen to be in a trend is a bit in decline, and where we can help farmers and try and support them to make good management decisions to try and reduce the impact on our water bodies. So it's a confidential service trying to help farmers.
And water quality can mean different things to different farmers in different parts of the country, isn't that correct?
Yeah, it is. Like, it depends on, like, we're down in the southeast today here, free draining soils, this tillage country here, so we can see even the rain we had last night, and still there's cars travelling across the field. If you go up to the Midlands or into the west area, much heavier soils where you wouldn't be able to drive a car today. So in this side of the country we often have nitrate losses because of free draining soils, but in other parts of the country where you have heavier soils, we would associate more with phosphorus and sediment losses as well.
So you have an ASAP demonstration here on the Teagasc stand.
That's correct.
At the ploughing this year. Can you just give me a little bit of background in terms of what the work's entailing at the moment?
Yeah, so a big message for us for farmers is that sometimes you have certain soil type, and it depends on the part of the country in. So with more rainfall parts of the country, soils are going to be wetter, but depending on your soil type, that will associate what kind of pollution that comes off your farm. So we have a kind of demonstration here with tillage soils, a free draining and a heavier tillage soil, a poorly draining one, and we also have a grassland soil that's a heavy, poorly draining grassland soil, and a free draining grassland soil, and a peat soil as well. And what we're really doing is, when a rainfall event occurs, a heavy rainfall event occurs, like I did last night, we're showing farmers how your soil reacts to that rainfall and where the water goes. So does it go down through the profile in the soil, down to the groundwater, which could be nitrate leaching, or does it go over the top via overland flow and straight into a drain and river? So it's really just showing farmers what happens and maybe how to react and how to manage your farm to avoid losses to water.
So this is fundamentally a two-phase programme. Let's quantify the issues depending on where your location is, but also then coming up with the relevant advice to manage your soils in the most effective way possible.
Yeah.
Is that the way to look at this?
Once a farmer's in our area where we're working, we work with the local authorities, catchment scientists as well, so Law Pro is the name. So it's very science-based, so the local authorities will actually look in the rivers in the local area. They'll identify exactly what the problem is. They'll give us that information, and then we can go out to the farmer and say, right, phosphorus is not a problem here, but nitrogen is, or nitrate is, so we'll focus on that problem. We'll walk the farm with the farmer, and if we see anything that we think that they might be able to make some improvements, we'll suggest that to the farmer and make a plan for the farm. And like I said, it's free, it's confidential, it's a voluntary programme. Anything we say inside the gate stays inside the gate with the farmer, and that's really important to us. And we work with the farmer, support them through that journey to help them, I suppose, reduce those losses from the farm.
So nitrates has been a very big issue in the farming and even the more general media over recent weeks. So the work you're doing, that's very much a practical response to the nitrates challenge, to look at it in that specific sense.
Yeah, and like I said, down on those free draining soils, and nitrate loss is very strongly linked to free draining soils, because nitrate doesn't bind very well to soil. So if you have excess nitrate in the soil and you get a heavy rainfall event, particularly from now on into the winter time, the potential to lose nitrate is high. So we come up with solutions for farmers to try and avoid that and maybe reduce the impact of those losses. And again, that will have a ripple effect that, I suppose, if we don't fix the problem, about half our rivers at the moment across the country are not meeting the required European standards, and we're trying to bring those up to the required standard, good or high status by 2027, and hopefully working with farmers. And it's been very positive over the last, since 5 years, nearly 5 years at this stage. Farmers are working very hard with us to really putting their shoulder to the wheel, and we're getting a lot of work done. And we can see actually improvements in the areas we're working in already, which is really beneficial.
You talked at the outset about the different soil types. So if I'm on a heavy soil, let's say in the west of Ireland, Is there anything that I can physically do to change the soil type that I'm working with?
I always say you're dealt with the hand you're dealt with. You have a heavier soil type, you can't change it. But what you can do is put a plan in place to avoid losses at those danger times. Generally, the danger times are in the shoulders of the year, so maybe in the springtime and this time of year. So avoiding spreading slurry on certain areas of the farm which are more prone to overland flow, that it can flow into a drain or river. And also we call those critical source areas. But also if you do identify an area where there's overland flow in those heavier soils, we can put hedges and riparian margins. There's different things that you can put in to mitigate that. And also we use what's called pollution impact potential maps developed by the EPA. So I can go to your farm, like on a farm scale, I can pull up a map with different attributes in it that will tell me what your farm is prone to, what type of loss, and even the overland flow patterns are predicted in it, so we can actually put mitigation to the right measure in the right place and give the right advice.
Okay. And so how many farmers are actively involved in the programme at the moment?
There's thousands actively involved at the moment, and a lot of plans have been developed over the last 5 years as well, and a lot of the measures that we've asked farmers to do. And remember, I said it's a voluntary service, so farmers don't have to do what we ask, but a lot of the measures that we've asked for farmers have put in place, so we're delighted with the progress and delighted the farmers are working with us so closely.
And the ASAP programme itself, how long will that continue for?
So we're running on for the next 4 years anyway. So and hopefully we'll see improvements, and hopefully we'll be there all the time, because I think farming is getting more tricky, difficult. I suppose there's a lot of things coming at farmers at the moment, and a lot of new regulations and a lot of new science coming at farmers. We have greenhouse gases, we have water quality, we have biodiversity. Now we have a new soil law coming in as well. So farmers need that support, because it can be quite confusing. And I suppose a lot of farmers, when they're walking their farm every day, sometimes they don't see something there that might be causing an issue, and an independent, I suppose, support system like ourselves can come in and help them out on that. And look, farmers just want a little bit of support and direction. That's all they need, and to help them to make the right decision. Because it can be an expensive, I won't say hobby, it can be a very expensive job if you put the wrong measure in the wrong place.
Okay. Where's the...
We are in the middle of the show field to ask all these people what their favourite thing about the ploughing is. What is your favourite thing about the ploughing?
Just seeing all the different stands and that, and seeing all the crowds about, and that, it's a good crack.
Probably the same, yeah, and like the animals and that.
It's everything. I love going around all the stalls and everything, and just trying to meet up with people as well that I haven't seen for a long time.
I suppose meeting everybody, isn't it? Yeah, lovely community and the mud, I suppose.
Plenty of folk. It's good to see new machinery, and I was at a lily stand there and they were offering me a job and things, so okay, getting to see plenty of new machinery and all the rest of it.
Tell me your favourite thing about the ploughing.
I think it's the ploughing.
Is it?
Yeah.
And have you gone and watched some ploughing today?
Not really.
Are you going to go down and have a little watch?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
The shops and the tractors. I love the tractors.
I've probably seen Farmer Phil.
Have you seen Farmer Phil today?
Yeah.
The beer tent.
All the people around. It's lovely to see everybody here today.
After coming out and seeing all the tractors and loads of people around, it's just great crack.
Working?
Working?
Yeah.
So what have you been doing here today?
Selling football boots.
How's that been going for you?
Good.
Good lad. What is your favourite thing about the ploughing?
I just love being here. You're allowed to get mucky and do whatever you want, basically. There's lots of places you can visit, and most things are free here.
The people and the fun and the camaraderie, and everyone seems to be happy today with the sunshine.
Wonderful. Yeah. What have you done when you've been here today?
I went to the engineering place, looked at all the machinery. Sure, it's a great day out.
What is your favourite thing of the ploughing?
All the machinery and all the stands and stuff.
Spending time with my family and just looking around and having a good day. The stands and the crack, lovely.
Brilliant. What is your favourite thing about the ploughing?
I'll say like everyone else, all the mud and getting a chance to meet all the rural world communities. We're from Imagine Broadband and our tent nearly blew away today, so that was the best part.
Okay. What is your favourite thing about the ploughing?
I don't know. I like everything.
You like everything. Why should people come here today?
If they like farming, I guess they should come here, but
Hello and welcome back to the Agriland Pavilion on the final day of the 2023 National Ploughing Championships. Now, no one needs to be told that it's been a very difficult year of battling on-farm costs. And as we know, it's been a very difficult year, particularly for some sectors. To talk more about this now, I'm joined by Donal Wheaton, Head of Agri with AIB, and Michelle O'Hara, Regional Manager with the Money Advice and Budgeting Service, MABS, and also James MacDonald, who's a Farm Management Specialist with Teagasc. You're all very welcome today. Thank you. Donal, if I could come to you first. AIB has seen an increase in demand for new money. Where has that been coming from for the ag sector?
Yeah, so I suppose to your earlier point, Francis, it's definitely in the last couple of days, conversations with our customers has been a little bit different than the conversations we would have been having 12 months ago. Obviously, there's been a significant change in the agricultural sector over the last 12 months. But I suppose I'd like to say that, look, farmers are very resilient. They've come through a lot over the last 5 years. I suppose you go back maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we had Brexit and the impact that was potentially going to have on farmers. That was quickly followed in by COVID and the potential impact and the negativity with regard to possible closures of beef processing plants and milk collection facilities. Farmers came through that. Then we had the impact of the war in Ukraine and increased input costs and the impact that was going to have. And from our point of view, what those 3 or 4 things have really shown the AIB is how resilient the sector is. You know, despite all those challenges that farmers have had to face, they're coming into this correction in 2023 in a very strong financial position. We've the lowest level of debt that we have on farms in maybe 10 or 15 years, and also what's a great indicator of financial strength of any sector is level of overdraft utilisation. And on the agri sector, across all the sectors, we've the lowest level of overdraft utilisation coming into this correction in 2023 that we've had for 4 or 5 years. That being said, we are having more conversations this year in relation to support for farmers. There is a buffer there from last year and relatively good farm incomes last year. Farmers have that buffer, but there's no doubt they are maybe using a little bit of that buffer now for a number of reasons. Obviously, reduced output prices, increased costs, impact of weather, increased interest rates. There'll be tax liabilities that will come payable now as well from the relatively good year, and that's all impacting on cash flow.
Have you seen any particular trends whenever you're talking to customers?
Yeah, so I suppose while we're having a lot of conversations in relation to, particularly because maybe of the nitrates derogation and the impact of that on the 3,000 dairy farmers that are directly impacted, but that change is going to impact all farming sectors. So there is definitely an increased demand for land, both for land purchase and also land rental. Having a lot of conversations in relation to that. We're also having a lot of conversations with our customers in relation to sustainability initiatives and what they're doing on their farm, whether that's the use of protected urea, low emission slurry spreading, increased animal welfare initiatives on their farm, animal housing. There's no doubt farmers are very much up for the challenge. They are playing their part. They've started to invest in technologies that will lower their carbon footprint, and that's going to continue. And we've seen the progress that farmers have made over the last 12 months with a reduction in the agricultural emissions over the last 12 months. So I think interest in land, interest in sustainability initiatives, and also interest in maybe some cash flow support options as well. And I suppose what we say to the farmers is that we have access to SBCI money, that's the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland money. We have energy efficiency loan schemes. We have a Ukraine credit guarantee scheme. We'll have access to another fund towards the end of Q4 that will be there to support farmers. And it's low cost funding that's available to farmers to support their businesses in the months and years ahead. And what we're saying to farmers, come and talk to us as early as possible. We're here to support you. We take a long-term view of the challenge of the industry. We didn't get excited last year when output prices were very, very good. We're not going to not be there to support the sector here when there is a little bit of a correction. We're here to support the long-term sustainable development of the agricultural sector. We fully recognise there's bumps in the road on any farm journey, and we'll support the sector through these bumps.
Yeah. And James, it's really important for farmers to make their money work smarter, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I suppose the thing about it is after, you know, the last year in the dairy side where they had incomes that were, you know, almost once in a lifetime. And, you know, I remember talking to a friend and he said to me, you know, it's harder to recover from a good year than a bad year because you might have spent cash flow on capital.
Yeah.
And, you know, now that money is spent and there might be a tax bill due around the corner, so we might be going to Donald to look for a little bit of a loan, or maybe to build a loan on the building we did out of cash flow, you know, to put cash back into the system. So I suppose the thing about it now for farmers to do is maybe to sit down and do a short cash flow to see how there will be at the end of the year, you know, starting into the new season next year. So we have short documents like a 5-minute cash flow. You can do the profit monitor to see how efficient you are. Have you lost any efficiency in the last 12 months, you know, to get yourself back on track from now going forward. And, you know, they're good things to do. And I suppose the long-term view, farmers aren't getting any younger and they also need to look at succession, and that's a long-term plan. So we're after having, you know, a good year. We need to look at where do we want to be in 10 years' time. And, you know, the nitrates thing has been a conversation here this week. What's the long-term direction of that and how is that going to affect the business? Will we manage to keep onto it? You know, there's risk in all farming enterprises, and, you know, I've been on record before talking about risk, and the risk in the past was people, you know, some people would stay under quota and always be under quota, and others always went over quota, and the derogation is almost going into that space now a little bit. So we need to take the long-term view, as Donald said, and do long-term planning. So at this stage of the year, it's always, you know, the worry about the tax bill. Dry stock farmers have had an okay-ish year. Tillage are struggling a little bit. The dairy farmers, not as good as last year, but that was once in a lifetime. So we need to sit down, take stock, do a short-term cash flow for the next, say, maybe 5-6 months, see how things look, and then look at doing some long-term planning. You know, so.
And Michelle, as Donald and James are saying there, you know, there has been higher costs this year. So the fortunes of farmers has changed very dramatically in the last 12 months. So if some farmers do, and farm families do find themselves maybe in financial difficulty, what's the best steps for them to take?
So always engagement is the key there, Francis, because the longer that you wait and not deal with an issue, the more likely it's going to be more and more difficult to actually deal with. And our experience in MABS is that it is very difficult sometimes for people to make that first reach out to an organisation like ourselves, say, look, I think I need a little bit of a hand here. And it might be as simple as just getting information regarding what they can do. As James referenced, planning. You said planning a few times, James. So important that when you're doing your budgets and you're doing your household budget, which is an additional challenge for farming individuals and families because they're running a business, a self-employed business, and then they're running a household as well. Yeah. And one of the things that we would always encourage people to do is to separate the two. Even have a separate bank account for both so that you can deal with one in one way and deal with the other in a business fashion. Engagement, as I said, is key. So if you had a challenge with a loan you might have with AIB, the first thing that we would tell you in MABS is to talk to AIB. In the event that you feel that you can't or you're reluctant to for whatever reason, then we can do that for you. We'll engage in your behalf. We can start the resolution process on your behalf if you so wish as well. But look for the information. Assess where you are with all of your finances. Go on to our website, which is mabs.ie. There's a huge amount of information there, but equally so, we have 60 locations throughout the country. We are a free, independent, confidential and non-judgmental service. And what I would say to anybody listening today, there's nothing we haven't seen. And that's the reality of the situation. We're here to work on your behalf, and we will find solutions for you, whether it just be managing your finances better, wondering why you're struggling in week 3 of every month when you think you shouldn't be, doing all those things better, or if it's a more serious issue, such as you're over-indebted, Many of us are in debt in one way or the other, but the key is whether you are over-indebted and how you deal with that challenge. In MAVS as well, we fully understand that there's a whole psychology associated with being over-indebted. So people experience a lot of different emotions at that time, be it guilt, shame, embarrassment, frustration, and all of those issues. We understand all of that. We have over 30 years experience in dealing with people and supporting them to have a long-term sustainable outcome, which is what we're trying to get them to. So don't be afraid, pick up the phone, call into one of the offices, ring the MAVS helpline. We're there to support you.
And sometimes it's just important, isn't it, James, to look at the basics, go back to planning the basics, the cost of feed, vet bills, labour costs, insurance. Like, just because you've always done it a certain way doesn't mean you should always continue that way.
Exactly. And I suppose, the places, sometimes people wonder, where do you start? Well, how much is in your bank account today? What bills are due over the next 3 months? What income are you expecting to come in from cattle sales or milk sales or the check in the post, over the next number of months? And how does that tally up? What's left over? And then it's over, right. Then you can see what you need, to service debt and run the household. So it can be very simple, and most people have the banking app on their phone now, so they can check the bank account now, and they can, do a partial cash flow to the end of the year. And for the majority of farmers, it's the main time of the year that they sell their animals and that they get the check from the Department of Agriculture. So it's very easy to add up the income side. And then it's, well, who do I owe money to, from work that was done earlier on in the year? So spreading the silage, paying the co-op bill, looking after the contractor, because you want them to come to you when the silage is ready and the weather is right next year. So there are certain people you have to look after, to keep the business running smoothly. And I think just even sitting down with a blank page and working that out is a start. And of course, all of our advisors in our 50 offices nationwide are available to help people do that. And, sometimes it's just about worrying, right, there's a bit of a bill due. Should I go to Donald for a bit of short-term finance? Is it an overdraft? Is it a term loan? What have I done in the last number of years? What has caused this pinch point? And it could be that there was a little bit of cash flow used to buy a machine or put up an extension to a building, and maybe a longer-term loan should be built on that to put cash back into the system. So it can start off quite simple, but as has been said already, if you internalise it, then you get under pressure. Then you're not making the right decisions. So it's good to talk to somebody, and everybody has their own support people. It could be the next door neighbour, it could be the local Teagasc advisor, you could be very friendly with your local bank person. So do go talk to somebody.
But farming is very different today than, say, when it was when my dad started out. And so when you look at the criteria for lending to farmers now, Donald, is it a very different atmosphere, a very different climate?
And just before I answer that, I just want to pick up on one point, and like what James is saying there, and Michelle as well, is 100% correct. Come and talk to us as early as possible if you're experiencing a little bit of difficulty, or you anticipate in 2 or 3 months' time. Come and talk to us, because in all our AIB branches, we're there to support your farm as well. The other thing, and James and Michelle both touched on it, the importance of quantifying the level of support you need for your business. Do that cash flow. It doesn't have to be a complicated document. It can be quite simple document, what's coming in, what's going out, both on your business but also on your personal, because what that allows us to do is put the right amount of support in place for your business, but more importantly, it allows us to get it right first time. The worst thing that we don't like doing is that a customer comes in, they look for argument's sake 20 or 30,000 euro support, and then 3 or 4 months later we find that actually wasn't enough.
And as Michelle and James are saying, it's the day-to-day running, it's the future planning, isn't it? And that is a really important differential to make.
100%. To your question though, in relation, what are the key considerations? Okay, so there's a lot of talk there about that the banks are interested in how much assets you own and all that. The number one consideration when we look at any loan decision, and it's the same now as it was when I started in banking 23 years ago, is repayment capacity. The first issue that we have to determine is repayment capacity. We work off, I would say, conservative budget prices, and then we stress test off them. So unless we can get and show our second line that the repayment capacity is there on a stress scenario, that we take into account the what if scenarios. What if there's a disease outbreak? What if there's a weather cost? What if there's a labour issue? We need to show a certain debt service cover. After that, then you get into the other criteria, such as track record is so important. You know, has the farmer been there before? Have they done what they said they would do? I always encourage farmers to under-promise and over-deliver. That, you know, build up your track record, build up your credibility, instead of taking a loan out for, like, farmers always like to borrow short term, but we'd encourage them, if the bank will give you 10-year money, take 10-year money, and if you pay that back over 4 or 5 or 6 years, you've improved your credit score, your credit grade, your track record, because you've over-delivered on what you said you were going to do. So track record then is very, very important. And then other things that are taken into account, such as how much money that they're putting towards themselves. Is this a recurring issue for the farm, that just because the first bump in the road, have they the ability to manage volatility? Because volatility is very much part and parcel of farming now. You know, like every farmer, we're not going to have a straight line. It's not going to be plain sailing forevermore. And over the next 10 years, we're going to have dips and troughs. And it's particularly noticeable, these peaks and troughs are getting more and more pronounced. So you need to have a system that's resilient to be able to weather these shocks when they come. And we'll be asking that question. How is the business able to weather these shocks? And James made a very, very important point. Obviously, last year was a relatively good year. Guys looking for support, we're going to ask the question, where did the money go that maybe was generated last year? And there can be very, very valid reasons, and an option, as James pointed out and Michelle as well, that retrospectively funding that capital expenditure that a farmer did out of their own resources, and they might have done that 20 or 30 spend on farm roadways or a calf house or a calf feed or whatever the case may be, we'll retrospectively fund that, and that gives a direct cash injection back into the business, and hopefully will support the business until output prices recover again.
And one other key issue that we unfortunately won't have time to get to today is farm succession, and I know all of your organisations are very keen in ensuring that is a key factor going forward too. So maybe at another stage you'll come back and talk to us about farm succession. But for today, Donal Wheaton, Head of Agri AIB, Michelle O'Hara from MABS, and James McDonald, thank you so much from Teagasc for joining us. Now we're going to pop back out and see what else is happening at the National Ploughing Championship.
So we're here at the Pearson Milking Technology stand at the Ploughing Championships. It's day 3 of the National Ploughing Championship, and we're speaking with Lloyd. So Lloyd, can you just kind of introduce yourself first of all?
Yeah, Lloyd Pearson, so co-managing director of Pearson Milking Technology, along with my brother David Pearson. So yeah, we're a 3rd generation family company based in Athy in County Kildare, and we're 75 years in business this year. So it was founded by our grandparents, Eric and Florence Pearson, and passed down to our dad, Alan Pearson, and now to myself and David.
Yeah, and I suppose, like, obviously 75 years is a great mark, but like, what did it start off with? It didn't start off with rotary milking parlours and herringbones. What was the start of the company?
Yeah, so it started off really with milk separators and basic milking equipment back in the 40s, so 1948. Yeah. And then we processed along to bucket milking plants, and then into little mobile milking plants, and then the tie-up stalls, and then into herringbones. So we would have installed the first herringbone parlour into Ireland.
Yeah, and it's come a long way now. Like, I imagine, like, your grandparents setting up didn't think to be a stand like this, the Plowing, with all the different milking options. They were probably thinking, nice little small company here, and we'll make a living out of it.
Yeah. No, it's come a long way now, and really technology over the last number of years, it's really brought the company on to where it is at the moment. So it's really working with research centres, universities, collaborating with industry. That's really where we're getting our new innovative products, along with ourselves.
Yeah. And I suppose to celebrate 70 years, you're doing a giveaway here at your stand for dairy farmers. I suppose it's targeting mainly dairy farmers.
Yeah, it is. Well, the equipment is the Pearson Smart Collars. So we're giving away €17,500 worth of Pearson equipment, just to try and support the labour end of farming in Ireland.
Yeah. And I suppose, like, just on, as you mentioned, labour and dairy farmers is probably an issue in most sectors now, and a lot of sectors, but I suppose particularly like technology, and I suppose a lot of technology here at your stand.
Yeah.
And that's a major focus for yourselves, really, isn't it? Technology.
Yeah.
And
big time, yeah. because as a wise man always said, that farmers can't work harder, they have to work smarter. So we're bringing the smart technology to the industry to try and support the labour shortage and the labour problems in it at the moment.
Yeah, so how would people enter the competition then?
Yeah, so you come down to our stand here in row 10, and we just have a couple of details to fill in on an iPad, and you're into the draw. So it's a free entry. So all you have to come down is look at our equipment and put your details in, and off you go.
And it's open to everyone. You don't have to be an existing Pearson's customer.
No. Really dairy farmers. So if you're a dairy farmer, come on down, and you're in with a chance to win.
Okay, yeah. Look, that's perfect, Lloyd. Thanks a lot for chatting to us, and best of luck for the future of the company.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're here at a very popular stand at the National Ploughing Championships. It's Met Éireann. We all love to talk about the weather, particularly in the farming community. Paul Downs is a meteorologist with Met Éireann. And Paul, I'm sure this is a very busy stand this week. We've dealt with a lot of mud, we've dealt with a lot of rain. We're still here on day 3, but there's been a lot of rain in the last few days.
Yes, it's a mud bath out there at the moment. It really is. We had about roughly between 23 and 28 millimetres of rain between Monday evening and Wednesday morning here. Now, we had a couple of showers yesterday afternoon, but they weren't quite as bad. And it's a nice enough morning out there, so the sun is back. But yeah, it made for a very messy situation, and we had a lot of rain on the ground already.
Yeah, and what is day 3 looking like? What is the forecast for today?
There is a chance of the odd shower around, mostly light. Overall, though, good sunny spells, so a good end to the week.
Yeah, a good car park drying for us all to get home tonight.
Exactly. It's quite a mess out there.
Look, it's been some extremes this year as well. We've had a tough harvest for our tillage farmers, Paul. We've had some extremes this year with droughts, with floods and everything like that. Has our weather got more extreme, or is that just our perception of it?
Well, we don't look at one individual event, but for instance, March had its highest March rainfall, July had its highest July rainfall, and that's the highest rainfall of the year, about twice its average July rainfall. We also had June, which was May and June, we had absolute drought in 24 of our stations between that period before thunderstorms kicked in. We also had the hottest June on record, with minimum temperatures as well, above 16 degrees on average. That's the first time that's happened. We also see around the world there's not a lot more extreme events. So when you add all that up together, we're starting to see that climate change really kicking in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that's our perception that it's more extreme, but for farmers, literally I'd say your website is one of their first ports of call, along with Agriland, of course. But it's just so crucial for the farming sector. And I suppose forecasting and putting the forecast together, and weather can be so localised. And I'm sure you probably get calls saying, well, it's not like that my way.
Well, definitely we do. And with the thunderstorms we had through June and the heavy rain into July, oftentimes we were getting more intense rainfall over small areas. So it could even be one end of a farm getting a lot more rain than the other end of the farm. But as a farmer myself, and seeing this, it's been a very, very difficult year for farmers, from the drought, stifling things at the start of the summer, right through to the heavy rainfall. A lot of second cut silage wasn't able to be done, and I haven't seen much hay being made, and I'm sure the hay that's out there this year is probably not the best.
Yeah. But I suppose, Paul, in terms of putting the forecast together, we have a lot of technology here on the stand, and it's such a science, As a meteorologist yourself, I'm sure you've seen vast developments in the technology to tell us what weather is going to hit Ireland.
Yeah, meteorology is a relatively young science, and it's really evolving quite fast at the moment. However, our observations still come from maybe 800 balloons that are launched around the world twice a day to look at the upper atmosphere, and a lot more surface observations around the world. They're all put into a supercomputer. Some of the biggest computers in the world are running forecasts. And from that, we get multiple different options of what the forecast might be. And as forecasters, we're able to spot the patterns and see, okay, this is the one we go with, and forecast from there.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to look into the future a small little bit, Paul. We have storm names. We had Anthony, we had Betty, to the best of my knowledge, brought a lot of wind and rain for us a few weeks back. But I suppose the naming of storms and the status yellow alerts, the status orange, status red, like is that just a way for the public to sit up and pay a bit more attention, giving a name to a storm? There's method to the madness of doing this, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. Once a storm is named, there seems to be quite a rise in hashtagging of that name and talking about that storm specifically. Not all of these storms that are named by our group, being Ireland, England and the Dutch, or Ireland, UK and the Dutch, they may hit the other parts, England or Holland, but really for us, yeah, we get an option to name 1/3 of the storms in this year. We looked at scientists in Ireland, and Ireland has a strong history of science. We don't talk about it enough, and even meteorology. We have Kelvin, which you might know, the Kelvin scale. We have Beaufort, we have Boyle's Law, another one. So there's a lot of original meteorology actually started in Ireland years ago.
Yeah, and I think people get a great kick out of the storm names as well, you know, tagging people on social media. You might be Storm Paul. I don't think we've had a Storm Aisling yet. I'll have to put in for that next year. So, but I think people, it does, as you say, it makes the weather very accessible for people, and it raises awareness, because I suppose, especially in something like a status red, where conditions can get very, very dangerous, it makes people very much aware of what's going on around them.
Definitely. And I know people may get tired of having a lot of warnings out there, but you really have to heed when they go into any category, yellow, orange or red, but you really have to have a heightened reaction towards the named storms or anything with orange or red or, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and look, finally, Paul, long-range weather forecast, what are we looking at for the back end? How far ahead can we look? Are we going to get loads of those storms? Hopefully not.
Well, when you go into the longer range, you go from forecasting it more into climatology and looking at larger scale patterns, what's happening in the oceans and the like of that. It has some value, but it's not always bang on. Currently, we're seeing trends towards a warmer, wetter winter this year, quite typical with the El Nino pattern. And the fact we've had a lot of unsettled conditions over the past while, we're more likely to see a few more storms this year. Last year, the 2 storms we did get came this August. So we had a fairly quiet winter overall. We had 2 storms we didn't name that hit Ireland, but that was it.
Okay, well, Paul, thank you so much, and thanks to the team at Met Éireann for always keeping us up to date. Paul Downs, meteorologist with Met Éireann here at the National Ploughing Championships. So you can pop along and find out what the weather's going to be like maybe in your area from Paul.
You're very welcome back to the Agriland Pavilion here on day 3 of the National Ploughing Championships. Now, politicians of different persuasions don't tend to agree on a lot, but there appears to be one thing that they do agree, at least they have done over the last couple of days, and that is that the debate over the current nitrates derogation in Ireland is far from over. I'd like to welcome you to our pavilion, Catherine of the Oireachtas Committee on Agriculture, Food and Marine, Deputy Jackie Cahill, and also the Sinn Féin spokesperson on Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, Deputy Claire Curran. Deputy Cahill, first of all, the IFA has accused the government of sacrificing farmers to stay in power. Do you think that's fair?
Sacrificing farmers?
Farmers to stay in power.
No, I think now, you know, there's been a bit of posturing going on about the derogation. The Oireachtas Committee, which I chair, were in Brussels 2 weeks ago. We met the Environmental Commissioner. He was emphatic that the decision was made on the derogation. You know, there was absolutely no room for negotiation. They had made the decision. His Environmental Committee had made the decision, and there was going to be no revisiting of it. And I think we most definitely need now to concentrate on the 220. And I'm delighted the Commissioner has agreed to come to Ireland and see our unique style of farming here, because, you know, when we go back for the renegotiation of the 220, we will be the only farmers in Europe at that stage with a derogation. So I think we need to concentrate now on trying to maintain the 220. Hopefully we'll have water quality showing improvement, and derogation farmers, as you know, have taken on a lot of extra conditions in order to qualify for derogation, and hopefully those 31 conditions that's attached to being in derogation will have an impact on water quality, and we'll see that by the time we get to 2025. Like Claire and myself, we had the EPA in at the Agricultural Committee in July, just before the recess. And, you know, their report was what this decision was based on. And, you know, the facts were there, water quality wasn't improving. Now, you know, what farmers are really vexed over is that the improvements that they done and the extra requirements that they took on weren't given time to work and to show that that was, you know, having a positive impact on water quality. And, you know, we farm in derogation at home, my family farms in derogation, so I'm fully aware of the financial implications of this and the hardship that it's putting on farmers. And the ones that I'm, you know, have huge sympathy for is the men on limited acreage with, you know, cows, you know, 50, 60, 80, 100 cows, and that they now are told that they have to cut back cow numbers. And, you know, they're trying to get the next generation, you know, generation renewal. And if you tell your son or daughter, yeah, come back here farming, but we have to reduce some 80 cows to 65, they're going to turn away from it.
But Deputy Cran, I know you're also a member of the Oireachtas Joint Committee on Agriculture, Food and Marine. Do you think there's been some political point scoring been going on in the last week over this crucial issue?
Well, look, I think it'd be hard not to, for anyone in government not to admit it has been a bit of a mess. I mean, really right now, the Taoiseach has to get on the same page as the Minister for Agriculture for the benefit of farmers. If they're going to do this meeting with the Commissioner, they need to be on the same page, they need to have a strategy going in, and they need to be speaking from the same hymn sheet. That part of it has been messy. And look, maybe in some ways Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are trying to find the difference in themselves, and maybe there's a bit of that going on. But at the end of the day, you know, the focus has to be for the farmers. I hope in a way they haven't been given false hope on this, because as Jackie said, it's not just the Minister that's been clear on this following his meeting with the Commissioner. The committee members got the exact same response, and certainly an impression that it is 220. Now, the only little bit of hope there too is when the Minister was in a committee last week, he did confirm some areas will remain at 250, and that just kind of shows you that you can have a stocking rate of 250 and your water quality clearly is okay in those areas. He did say there will be room when they go to 220 to go back to 250, all depending on water quality. I think what's really frustrated farmers is the rug really has been pulled from under them. They haven't had that time to see the consequence and the impact of the practices that they have put in place, in fairness to them. So that's disappointing. But I think we need a plan now to retain the 220, and I think the focus needs to be on that. I don't think the meeting is going to come up with anything different.
Yeah. Do you think it's a waste of time for the Commissioner coming at this particular moment to Ireland? Because, you know, there is a deal done as such. I know we're working to the future, but do you think he should have come earlier?
Well, possibly he should have come earlier, but I think it's most definitely welcome he's coming, because, as I said, our grass-based system of farming is unique in Europe, and we need to show the Commissioner that our grass is able to absorb these nutrients, and that we need that we can have at that level of stocking and be environmentally friendly. And we have to show the Commissioner that this is what we're doing. Now, there will be a change of Commissioner next May or June, but I think it's impossible to get. It is important that we get the Commissioner and his officials here, show them, yes, we can farm at this high stocking rate. And as Claire has said, you know, we see the Temple catchment area in West Cork, where the highest proportion of derogation farms in the country are, the highest concentration, and water quality is improving there. So I think we have to work on that and expand on that. And I think there's a serious onus on Teagasc now to come up with the scientific arguments that show that we can farm at this level of stocking and not have an impact on water quality. We all want to see water quality improving. It's absolutely essential. But we also, we also want to show that our level of farming is sustainable farming, and we can do that. And the demand for food out there was never greater. We met Ambassador McCain there as an committee a couple of weeks ago. She's the UN Ambassador for Food. There's 340 million people in the world today as we sit here starving. And I think that has been lost in all this debate. And Western Europe can produce sustainable food for those people. And we can't let any policies hinder that. And as I said, we have to get water quality right. I fully accept that. But yes, bring the Commissioner here by all means. And the more we can educate Europe about our system of farming and the way that our grassland can grow 300 days a year, We have our stock out 300 days a year. We just have to educate the rest of Europe that this is sustainable farming and doesn't damage the environment.
And Francis, I think we should take every opportunity to bring commissioners from Europe, because Europe do have such a say now on farming in Ireland that we have to take every opportunity to bring them here and let them see what we do, because we are unique, and let them see how farmers farm in Ireland. I think we need to take every opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Now, obviously, there'll be certain farmers deeply affected by the derogation cut, but it's going to impact widely across the communities.
Yeah.
Do you think there needs to be financial supports put in place, or what other supports would you like to see the government, particularly now we have a budget coming up just around the corner?
Yeah, well, the wider impact in one sense is going to be land, because, I mean,
which is already under pressure.
Massively so. And, I mean, at the end of the day, when this does formally go to 220, the Minister said we'll know the areas firmly, definitely, because there may be some tweaks to the maps by the end of September. And then you're going to have October, November, December, 3 months, and a lot of farmers will be either trying to source land to lease or to buy, which is next or near impossible, or they're going to be reducing the number of animals that they have in the herd, and there'll be complications with that. But there will be a knock-on impact to other sectors in farming, particularly when it comes to land. And there's already competition, like a bit of land goes up for sale. You'd like to see a local farmer or a young farmer, there'll be an impact on them as well. You know, forestry are there now as well, that's competition too. So there is going to be an impact on land, and we do need to see financial supports from the Minister and from Europe, actually, in relation to the farmers that are going to be directly affected by the derogation in the first instance. And the Minister has said that's actually going to exceed the 3,000 we thought it would be when the mapping is complete. Yeah. So you're looking at over 4,000 farmers, and they do need to be supported.
Yeah. The banding obviously is going to have an impact on the amount of farmers that qualify. But just even on the 220, you know, I think there's scope for if our farmers use a low protein concentrate in their ration. I think that can have an impact on the banding. Also, calves under 3 months of age, I think, should be discounted from calculation of your stocking rates.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, because we've had a lot of concerns about calf welfare here in this country that have been raised.
I've raised that.
And this is a factor.
Yes, I've raised that with the Minister, and I'm confident that calves under 3 months of age will be discounted, which will mean that dairy farmers...
Has he indicated that to you?
Yes. So dairy farmers, you know, won't be worried about the young calf impacting on their stocking rate, and I think, you know, that will have a very positive impact on calf welfare, because I think we all know now that calves need to stay on the farm for a period of time to ensure that we were able to keep our live trading calves going, our live shipping of calves to the continent. And I think it's very important that dairy farmers, you know, don't see that young calf impacting on their stocking rates. Also, and it was brought up the last day with the Minister at the Ag Committee about the way the calculation of slurry has changed and the nutrients value in slurry. That has changed from, it used to be 5.1 per cubic metre, and now the department are evaluating at 2.4. And now the department have promised to come back to the Ag Committee with a paper on the reasons for that change. Yeah. And if we could get that back up to somewhere around 4, it will have a positive impact on the banding figures as well. Yeah. So there's a lot of work that can be done there on the banding and try and reduce the calculation per cow. Now, it's not going to solve a person, but if the 220 in essence became 227 or 228, that would take X amount of farmers out of the destocking scenario that they find themselves in. So, you know, there's still scope there for positive things to be done. But, you know, as Claire has said, the competition for land is going to increase. We've already seen it, you know, very intense competition for land.
We've been talking to tillage farmers for the last few days, and they are deeply concerned, and that's something you can appreciate.
Yeah, I met a delegation of tillage farmers in my office in Nina last Monday, and they're very, very worried about being able to hold on to their land bank. And, you know, tillage has become, you know, you have economics of scale in tillage now, and the machinery is very big. And if a tillage farmer hasn't got, you know, significant acreage, it's not a viable financial option for them. So that's going to be an issue, and I actually don't know how you're going to solve that, because the person who's leasing the land is going to lease it to the person who has the ability to pay the most for it, and that's free enterprise. So I actually don't know how that equation is going to be worked out, and it's something the Minister is acutely aware of, but it is a problem, and you know, we all want to preserve our tillage acreage.
What do you think needs to be the approach there?
Yeah, well, look, tillage farmers are obviously under a lot of pressure, and they've had a horrendous year. They've really, really suffered due to the weather, of course. We had the Irish grain growers with us yesterday, a really productive meeting with them, and they will tell you the potential out there for tillage is huge. And like, we've commitments made in the Climate Action Plan that have to be met in relation to more cover for tillage as well. And I think it's a huge potential for us to produce our own and stand on our own 2 feet an awful lot more. And tillage is one area we really need to be supporting. They are going to need support in the budget, that's absolutely for certain, but it is important to speak about them when we talk about the derogation, because there is an impact on them as well, and we need to be mindful of that too.
Yeah. Do you think that we are now at the start of a new chapter for farming in Ireland, though?
Well, as I said, when we were in Brussels a couple of weeks ago, we met 3 different commissioners and a lot of different officials, and I've never seen such a consistency of policy in Brussels. Like, when I was president of a farming organisation, I used to be in Brussels on a very regular basis. The whole policy in Brussels now is climate change, and every policy that they're devising in Brussels is reducing emissions, climate change. And like, in my view, and I'm not a climate change denier, we have to accept climate change as a fact of life, and we have to adapt to it. But everything we do for the climate has to be economically sustainable as well. And I feel some of that has been lost in the argument. And we have to, everything we do, yes, most definitely we have to be environmentally sustainable, but it also has to be economically sustainable. And I think, that's essential. And I was worried coming home from Brussels about the intransigence of the policy measures that's coming there. And like, one thing that I came home very convinced about is that the next CAP, which it'll be coming in 2027, which isn't too far away, even though we're only after going into one now, and it's just starting with 2027, isn't 100 miles away. It's going to be virtually, in my opinion, it'll be virtually all environmentally based, and it'll have no links with production.
Do you think, Deputy Curran, that Irish farmers are getting the recognition that they deserve for the measures that they've taken already? I know you said, Deputy Cahill, that perhaps some of them haven't been given enough time to actually bed down and be seen to be working, but do you think that is an issue?
I think farmers very, very rarely get recognition. I think they nearly don't expect it. I think farmers are in an awful lot of a different place now. Years and years ago, the reliance and the dependence and the respect that was there for them, because they worked damn hard for not a whole pile. I mean, you're not in farming to be rich in a lot of cases. They work really hard, and there are so many challenges now, particularly around climate action, and those challenges have to be met, and they will be met. But if you take dairy farmers just as one example, like, they've had the bandy and they've had this now with the derogation, and like, we need to see stuff coming from government now to support them on the same side. So we can't be asking of farmers all the time and not giving them the supports that they need. So I mean, we have a target to meet. Farmers are ready, willing and able, but they have to be supported. And like, the question has to be asked, do we want farmers to reduce productivity that we've pushed them into for generations? And we have to pick a side here, and we have to find the balance to do it the right way. But farmers have to be supported, and they deserve an awful lot more recognition than they get.
Okay. I would think slurry storage and slurry capacity. I've been pressing this with Minister McConnell. I think in the budget we need to see a serious initiative on slurry storage, and I think the more slurry storage we have, the more equipped we'll be to ensure that there's no runoff there, spreading of slurry. And the close period for slurry spreading is going to have to be observed, and observed strictly, because we all know examples of where slurry has been spread in the months of December, and that's, first of all, is a very efficient use of the nutrients that's in slurry. But if you spread slurry there and the ground is waterlogged, it's going to end up in our rivers. Yeah. So I think there has to be, the way to avoid that and the way to overcome it is with extra slurry storage. And I would be urging the Minister to put a very attractive grant in place. Now, in last year's budget, we allowed the capital depreciation over 2 years, which was a great help. But there needs to be a special fund in TAMS this time for slurry storage.
Thank you so much for joining us, Deputy Jackie Cahill and Deputy Claire Curran. It's a subject we could be talking about for the rest of the afternoon, but our teams are out and about, and we're going to go back out and see them in just 1 minute. And I'd like to just thank you, our sponsors here at the Agriland Pavilion this afternoon, UPMC and Pearson Milking. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we're here at the JFC Agri stand. I'm joined by CEO of JFC, John Concannon. John, how has Ploughing 2023 been for JFC? It's a bit tacky, it's a bit muddy, but look, spirits are good today in the sunshine at least.
at least we have sunshine today. You know, it's been, ploughing is special, but this one is extra special, and the mud is free. But having said that, it's still a great show. It's the real best show in Ireland. In fact, it's probably the best agriculture show you could have in Europe, and we do a lot of shows throughout Europe. This one has worked particularly well for us. As always, JFC is innovative, have new products, and this year we're launching the new solar feeder, which holds 4 tons of feed. That's a big innovation, it's a change, and I suppose people say, why do you want 4 tons, or why do you want to be able to feed? This machine will feed 30 calves at a time, and it puts it out, it distributes it, and the food is clear. The big thing is fouling from crows is a terrible nuisance, and not alone do they eat stuff, but eat the feed, they're also in and fouling all the other feed that's in the feeder already.
Yeah, so tell us, this is working off solar power now, John.
Solar power, we're living the dream, like cars are solar, feeders are solar, so we're up ahead again in technology.
And it's all self-contained in this unit.
It's self-contained unit. This particular unit now is on skids. The other one has a wheeled unit, so you can pull it in the field. Ideal for feeding cattle if you're fattening bullocks or any sort of beef stock. The big issue with it is health and safety. And if you have heavy livestock, you have to feed them with a bucket, or you have to feed them in the field. And especially from ladies' point of view, this makes it an awful lot easier. It's fully automatic. It's worked by solar. You can set the prescribed feed that you want for each of the calves or each of the cattle. So if you want to give 6 kilos a day, 5 kilos a day, whatever, you can do that in 2 feeds or in 3 feeds.
Yeah, and you're cutting down on waste then as well, John, because the cost of inputs, we all know how expensive it is to feed animals, so you don't want to be wasting any of it, and you want it to be as efficient as possible.
The big news there, if you take the dairy farmer or the beefman, is the cost of bag manures and the cost of feed. Them are the 2 big killers at the moment, and the other one is labour. This is labour saving, is key. It's also the fact that there's no waste and the feed is dry and they get it. When this thing disperses automatically, so you can set it, we'll say for if you have 20 cattle, 3 kilos a day, and or 6 kilos a day, you can do 3 in the morning and 3 in the evening. Mm-hmm. The cattle know the time it's happening and they come there. They wouldn't waste one nut. There's nothing left for the crows, and that's the special.
And cows are creatures of habit. They really are, John. They love routine. And look, you mentioned innovation from JFC, and talk to us about this automatic feeder. This is also on the stand this year here at Ratheniska.
Well, if you take it, we've pioneered the automatic feeding, and we've really improved it. We look at some of the competitors, what they're doing. We improve on things. We have a superior feeder to any of the other ones. It'll feed from 140 up to 200 calves automatically. And this we have proven, this is our 3rd or 4th year on it. I think we have the lion's share of the market. It's a quality product. And the big question is, we sell because we service. That's the key factor. So there's no such thing as, who do you ring? We have always somebody on call. And a lot of the time we can fix it by just making a call over the telephone. But we'll have a serviceman on site. We have a good machine, we have a reliable machine, and the customers are happy. Yeah. And we know, you talked about tire kickers, there's a lot every year. This year, the people who come on our stand are real customers who came with interest, they know what they want, and they want to buy it off us.
Yeah, and look, the grants that are available as well, that helps as well for farmers who want to invest.
Key factor is, there's this Young Farmers Grant. TAMS is vital for us. Our machine is qualified for TAMS. And the latest one I heard yesterday, I didn't know that, but from a lady point of view, they get 60% grant.
Absolutely, yeah.
So is that a bit biased for the men now?
Well, we won't go down that road. That's for a debate for a different day, John.
Well, if it was the other way around,
we'll have to get you onto a panel now about male farmers. Yeah, but look, John, I suppose finally, it's a great show, as you said. It's great to have the shop window here. There's lots of other products here on the JFC Agri stand as well for farmers to come and see at the show as well.
Yeah. Just on your own behalf, and I suppose I couldn't go without saying about Anna May and her Q and the crew that's behind her and working with her in what they have done. it's easy to look at the things that's wrong now. There's a bit of muck. The problem is, 3 weeks ago, this site was absolutely dry. It rained for 2 or 3 days and destroyed it.
Yeah.
There's nothing they could do about that. It's a huge event, and credit to them. Credit to yourselves for doing your programme and the support you've given companies like us. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So all things working together, we'll get over it. I suppose it was a lot worse a couple of years ago when we had COVID and we couldn't have a ploughing. So
Absolutely.
we're here, we're happy. It might be a bit muddy, but we'll get the job done.
Absolutely. Well, John Concannon, CEO of JFC Agri, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. So we're here at the ABP stand at Plowing 2023, and I'm joined by ABP Food Group's Agri-Sustainability Manager, Stephen Conley. Stephen, tell us a little bit about what the beef processor is doing to improve sustainability, I suppose starting on farms.
Yeah, I suppose first of all, if you look at our demo farm, which is something we've invested heavily since 2015 now, so we have a trial farm down in County Carlow, and that focus there is looking at the role of genetics to add to, I suppose, improve the efficiency on farm, but also improve the sustainability. So that's a key one. So look, it's looking at if we can get the right genetics from the dairy herd, can that, we'll say, reduce the age at finish, can it add extra carcass weight, and can it also reduce animals that have a lower methane?
And I suppose just briefly, Stephen, what is the beef system in place on the ABP demo farm?
So the system is dairy calf to beef. We finish our heifers at 19 months. And we actually have 140 heifers finished, 2022 born heifers to date, and then we finish our steers at 21 months. So that's typically your heifers about 275 kilos, and your steers are 320 kilos. Try and get as much grass into the diet as possible, and with as minimal amount of concentrates.
And I suppose from the genetics perspective of the livestock on the farm, Stephen, what kind of trends or what are you seeing as regards?
Look, we've been there at this a long time now, and what we've seen since all the data, we put through over 4,000 animals, and we can say over €200 difference in carcass value to the farmer at the same age. So that's huge, and in terms of when we looked at the carbon footprint, there was a 13% reduction. So it's huge, and even this year, and the animals that we've trials so far, there's massive variation again. So constantly every year we're seeing that. There could be up to 50 kilo different in the carcass at exactly the same age.
So really it's the animals that are more environmentally sustainable are also more economically sustainable on farms as well.
They go hand in hand. If you can get a more efficient animal, that will transform into lower carbon footprint, which again you need that. You need both going together. I suppose not just the animal as well. The animal is one thing, then it's looking at, we'll say, the health of the animal, so buying the calves from a good source. We're looking at what's the best rearing system, and so what we've started to go on to now is looking at multi-species, the multi-species swards, and seeing can that give us a further reduction in costs, but also a further reduction in our carbon footprint.
So I'm sure we'll be hearing more about the multi-species, but another notable one on the ABP demo farm is the red clover silage. How has this been working on the system?
Yeah, sure, it's 3-4 years of the red clover silage. To be honest with you, it was something we seen in the organic farm in Good Herdsman, and we said, look, can we try it, see if it works? And look, we're putting zero chemical fertiliser on that ground. We'll say this year I think we've got over 200 bales of red clover silage, and what we're doing is we're then mixing that with our conventional, and it's dropping down our need for our protein in our concept, which helps reduce the cost by €20 a tonne, and it also reduces our soya. And look, there is that area of soya, is it sustainable or not? So we're getting as much homegrown protein into the animals as we can.
And another thing we hear a lot about in the Advantage Beef programme is asking about the genetics of the calves you're buying. Is the commercial beef value, does it have a role to play in this, and what role? If so, what role?
Yeah, look, I suppose, the research on the trial farm, implementing this through the Advantage programme and promoting that to farmers. The genetics a huge part to play, and the CBV. Look, with please God, in the next couple of years, the National Genotyping programme, that will drive CBV, and look, it is the way forward once it's balanced for a suitable carcass. So it is the way forward. Look, even this spring we put over 2,000 doses of semen out into dairy farmers, and we hope, in time, we want to be able to, I suppose, when calves have been sold, that the ones with the high CBV will have a different price than the ones with low CBV. So that, hopefully that would
And are the farmer members of the Advantage Beef programme, are they seeing the benefit of using the higher CBV or buying the higher CBV calves?
Look, when we actually looked at the data, like even looking at the beef benchmark report where we give their awards out, when we see there, when we break their animals into top third on CBV versus bottom, you can see better conformation, younger and better carcass weight. And it's there in black and white. Like,
and of course that's all back to profitability and sustainability going hand in hand.
And look, even this year we would have linked we've roughly 600 calves directly to beef farmers from dairy farmers, and you can hear they want to buy calves again next year. So there's definitely added value there. Like, so, look, we need to ask that question. We need to use the CBV genotyping will help push that on, and building that relation with the dairy and beef farmer. Like, dairy farmers are all also beef farmers. Like, so there has to be that relationship built. Like, so it is.
Stephen, thank you very much.
No problem. And great to have you, Ratheniska.
And we're back here again at the Agriland Pavilion on the final day of the National Ploughing Championships. We've looked at the mixed fortunes of various sectors over the last few days and the challenges that they've been facing. But the sheep sector has been one of the most exposed to high production costs and falling margins. And joining me now to chat more about this is Kieran Delaney from the Irish Beef and Lamb Association, Kevin Comiskey, the IFA Sheep Chair, and Sean McNamara, Sheep Chair with the Irish Cattle and Sheep Farmers Association. You're very welcome today.
Thank you very much.
Kevin, input costs have soared for sheep farmers. How much do you reckon has been wiped off incomes this year?
We've done the figures for this year so far. 11 million has gone down so far this year in profit to sheep farmers, and we see that following on from Teagasc's figures in 2022. We've seen a margin was announced when I started highlighting this crisis in January, a margin of €7 per ewe. So when you take the 11 million off it, and indeed I was talking to a farmer the other day, has 115 ewe flock, 157 lambs, €14 a lamb is down this year. So when you add that up in figures, you'd be at a -9 per ewe this year. So a clear indication of 11 million, and that's where we'll be pushing on the Minister for the bar funding, or indeed the 9 million that was launched European money.
Yeah. Sean, you have been no stranger to the Minister this year, but do you think he's been listening to you?
I don't think the Minister was listening to us at all. We're being treated as a poor relation of sheep farmers. After all, I went to the Minister 2 years ago or 3 years ago during the cap payments, and I asked the Minister for the package together for the sheep farmers at €35 a ewe. I was the only organisation to ask for it at the time. When I asked every other organisation to back me, they wouldn't. But the Minister gave me a deaf ear again. Now, this last 2 years, I'm at the Minister to give us money out of bar funding, and he doesn't seem to want to listen to us. Neither Minister McCarlough, or Minister Hayden, or Minister Hackett. They've all excuses. We can't give it to you. You say, don't meet the criteria. But everyone else sees to meet the criteria. There was one to give to the organic scheme and everything else. But when it comes down to sheep farmer, there was no funding there. And unless the Minister does something, and does something quick, there will be no sheep sector in this country. We got rid of the beef sector in this country, and the same thing is going to happen to sheep. And like, lads, it's not too far away. It's only a couple of years away till this will happen to the sheep sector. Thank you.
Kieran, there is a funding package that's sitting there, 9.5 million, that's coming in from the European Commission. Do you think that a significant percentage of that should go to sheep farmers?
Well, to be honest, our view is it shouldn't be the government subsidising the sheep. It should be the factories paying more. And if the factories aren't willing to pay more, it's time to cut production. And just because it shows if a farmer cuts right back to his production, he'd be 2,500 better off on a family income by just having minimum stocking rate and keep his single farm payment in his pocket.
Yeah.
So we're promoting farmers to keep their single farm payment rather than paying out in their expenses out of single farm payment.
Yeah. Kevin, you mentioned bar funding. Now, I know that you've all asked the Minister for bar funding. It wasn't forthcoming. Has that been a huge disappointment?
It's been a huge disappointment, and it is there, and we've put clear criteria to the Minister
to support us on that. And going back as far as 2016, when we secured within IFA and our chairman at the time, John Linsky, we got a €10 sheep welfare scheme. We've been looking for the €30 since that. And, you know, for the Minister to come along within the terms of the CAP negotiations and give €2, it was an insult to farmers. So he needs to broaden out on that. We have good criteria and concrete proposals there put to him to increase it to €30 within the shearing aspect. We have €4 for shearing, €4 for the presentation of the wool, and €10 for the dipping. So, and they're all welfare issues within the sheep industry. So, you know, the Minister has to act on it now, and if he doesn't act on it, as Sean has rightly pointed out, the time is running short. Confidence in the sector at the minute is very low. You know, and there's people even talking at the minute, especially in the hill areas, and not putting out the ram and all this at this time of the year. So if that happens, it's a clear indication of the confidence that's not there in the sector. So we have to get funding into it, and I've made this clearly. Basically, the BEAR fund and the 9.5 million is there, and I've said to the Minister he could use that, and we need to get an injection in November into the system and into the sector. But basically, wherever the money comes from, the sheep sector has been the poor relation for years now, and we have to get it. And I've been saying this to numerous politicians. I don't think there's a politician in the country that I haven't been in contact with, and it seems to be falling on deaf ears, but hopefully on the 10th of October that they will see sense and they will support the sector.
Yeah, and Sean, you're saying there that we're reaching a critical time now that farmers may exit the sector just completely.
Yeah, at the moment, like Kevin said the truth, hill farmers, all they're getting is €1 a kilo for their lambs. So a hill farmer with 25, with a lamb 25 kilos, all he's getting €25. Now that man is definitely not going to go put his lambs back to the ram again, or his ewes back to the ram again. Same with the lowland farmer. The most you can get is 620, 630. Get your lamb at them maybe 125. This day and age, 125 is good for nothing. In 1986, I got £100 for lambs. And now that £100, what would it do that time compared to this measly 125 for lambs? After all, in England at the moment, lambs is $6.65 a kilo and getting dearer. And we are coming along and taking 620. Like there's something seriously wrong.
Who do you think's to blame for that? Who do you think is to blame for that?
Sorry?
Like, who do you think is to blame for that difference?
I think our meat factories is to blame a lot for it, but also Board B is to blame a lot for it. I know Board B will say, oh, we're getting markets here, we've markets in China, we've markets in America, we've markets here, there and everywhere. But they are the ones that's to blame for it. They're not marketing our product. Maybe they are marketing it, but the factories is obviously not taking up the markets. There's an American market there for the last 12 months, and not one lamb has gone out to it. Now, you all know yourselves, there's people in Ireland over in America, and they'd be gladly, I know I have friends myself, they'd gladly buy Irish lamb out there, and they wouldn't mind what price they have to give for it. Now, I've travelled a good bit of the country, world this year. Not a good bit, but 3 or 4 countries. I have been in Croatia, and I see the price of Irish lamb out there. And no one believed me here. It was €70 a kilo for Irish lamb in Croatia, right? And in Brussels, outside of Brussels, Bruges was there, the place, there about 3 weeks ago. You would lamb out there, and it was much the same, €50, €60 a kilo for Irish lamb. And us farmers expected to produce lamb at $6.20 a kilo. It's totally ridiculous. If it doesn't change, there is definitely going to, and I'm waiting the last 4 years, 5 years, there's definitely going to be no sheep industry in this country for the simple reason. I see it around my own part of the country, men with 100 ewes, we'll keep 20, we'll draw a single farm payment. That's the way people are thinking. And we get the organic scheme. They're no longer going to do work for nothing. And we have a young group of farmers coming in here, and I feel sorry for them, because in fairness, there's no viable income from sheep for any young farmer, or for farmer for that matter. So the Minister has to think about our young generation coming along. They have to get a viable living out of farming too, and that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
What are your members telling you now, Kieran?
Well, we're telling a lot of our members it's time to cut back production as well. Do you not have enough bargaining power with the factories? No, the factories, the only way we're going to get bargaining power with the factories is when the numbers are cut back enough and we can reduce the imports of UK lamb coming in. Like last year, there was 440,000 head of lamb come into this country from the UK. We're averaging, say, 21 kg carcass. That's a 9,000 tonnes of sheep meat.
Yeah.
Now, that meat was never recorded as all the meat that went out of this country, which was 54,000 tonnes, was recorded as Irish origin. Now, we have a parliamentary question gone in on that to the Minister. What happened with the 9,000 tonne of lamb that has come in?
Yeah.
And we have not got a response.
What would you like to see done on that, though?
Well, we'd like to see that's reducing our prices of our lamb.
Yeah.
We would like contracts from the factories. We need forward contracts. It's the only way we can work is having a forward contract. Because if we have a forward contract, we let our lamb. We'll know then we have an opportunity to let our rams out to the O's if we know there's a good enough margin to get there.
Yeah.
If they're not offering a good enough contract, we won't let our rams out. And that's what it's down to.
Yeah.
Because last year for me, I was buying young lamb meal at $4.85 a tonne.
Mm-hmm.
Gone up from the $2.70 a tonne before
And
that.
it is about the margins, isn't it?
It's all
People
about the
can't
margin.
exist on that.
So it's gone to contracts. We're the only industry that doesn't work on contracts.
Yeah.
If you take, I was engaging with major retailers in this country after our protests in 2019. Two of them retailers told me they fix a 2-year contract on their buying of beef now with the factories. I'd imagine it's the same with the lambs. They're buying at a price for 2 years in advance. So there's no reason we can't be offered a contract.
And Kieran, we've been talking about the cost of production all week against different sectors, but really for the sheep sector, that is a really crucial issue, isn't it?
It is, of course. The cost of production and the cost of meal is a huge issue among farmers, and especially, as we were saying earlier on, especially on them hill-type lambs, where they're coming down off the hills and they have to go for further feeding. And we've seen farmers that bought them lambs last year, a lot of them lambs that have died in death. So they're very reluctant to buy them this year, or they're buying them maybe at a price. But when you go back as far as the UK and you see the New Zealand lamb coming into the UK, and indeed the Australian lamb is coming in. The New Zealand lamb is coming in at $3.65 a kilo. You have the Australian lamb coming in at $2.89 a kilo. England is putting that lamb into the food service there. It's a good commercial decision for the UK themselves. They're exporting their lamb in to France. I was visited there recently, and they're using France as a platform to get their lamb into other countries like Netherlands, Belgium, and right across Europe. And France's exports is up 16%, and it's not because of their production, it's because of their imports from the UK. And that's another clear indication of the effect of Brexit. So that's where we're saying to the Minister that he has to come forward, use this funding and give the injection into the sheep sector this year, because if it doesn't happen, and even on the markets, on the China market and on the American market, the criteria that was set for the Chinese market when EID tags was introduced some years back, we were told it was going to be the be-all and end-all, that we were getting into all these extra markets. The criteria is set that there's no lamb over 12 months of age. That's no mutton. That the lamb has to come from the place of origin, the birth where the lamb was born. So that does away with all the store lambs right across the west of Ireland especially. And also on that, and the major sting in the tail there is that it has to be bone in, it has to be boneless, and all the lamb products is bone in. So the criteria for the Chinese market is useless as a lamb product. And again, on the American market, we've seen the minister saying that no factories had applied for, an audit on to get into the American market. If this is true, it's very worrying, but I'm hearing that they have applied for it. And, for ministers to come back and after being flying around the world, indeed with Borby and different organisations, and say we have access to these markets, it's wrong giving false information to farmers when we haven't got access to these markets. We haven't, as was pointed out earlier, and not an ounce of lamb has gone into any of these markets. And when you have a difficulty in the lamb sector and in the market end of it, every market is useful. And I know to be a prime cuts would be going into the into America, but those prime cuts, and with all the Irish, as pointed out, that is in America, it's a very niche market and a very valuable market, and we have to get into them and get access to them.
Sean, would you like to see Board BA being a bit more aggressive on that front for your members?
Yes, I definitely would like to see Board BA being a bit more aggressive. And, after all, I know they're not they're going looking for markets. They're looking for markets in America. They're spending millions. Like I thought the American thing could cost 10 million. But it's us, the Irish taxpayer, that's paying for it. But us as farmers is getting no return for it. And that's the big problem. Every year we're getting less and less for our product. And our input cost, like Kevin says, is going up and up and up. And I'll tell you one thing about input costs. Last Friday, for example, I was dipping yours. And I decided to go into my local store to buy 5 litres of dip. In my own local store at home, it was €250. And I crossed the border. I'm only 25 miles away from the border. I crossed the border and I bought the exact same dip at €125. So this is where the English farmer, the northern farmer, has a big advantage over us. They're at least 30, their imports is costing them at least 30 or 40% less than us.
Yeah.
Now, they're getting $6.65 for the lambs in England. So you take the 30 or 40% less than us for imports and a few cents extra, like they have a viable product there. But like at less than 17, and I mean 17, it's the least you get. At less than 17, we have not a viable product in this country in lamb. Like it takes, I've been out with a few friends of mine, it takes at least 17 for any farmer to get hanging out. Like Taga said last year, like Kevin says, we're getting €7 profit per ewe. I'd say this year we're lucky we're on -7. It'd be more like the thing. So, like, I don't think Board B is doing their job. They need to get out there and do their job. There's all this English lamb coming in and Northern Ireland lamb coming in. It's coming in carcass form, it's coming in live form. And who's inspecting these factories to see what is this going out as? No one knows. Like, there's not one, there's either myself, Kevin, or that there can go into a factory and go in and inspect and see what this lamb is going out as. So, like, until we're prepared, until we're into the factories and inspect this lamb that's coming in, see what has been labelled as. We don't know what has been labelled as. We're hearing it's been labelled with Board B label. We don't know, but it's definitely labelled as product of Ireland, even though no matter what way it's coming in. Thank you.
And Kieran, last question to you. Are you telling your members to stick with it?
We're telling our members to stick with it, but cut down and just claim their farm payments. For me, I'm dipping into my single farm payment this year to cover the costs of the lambing of this year because I put such meal in, I was lambing early. And the single farm payment is designed for me, for my own personal use. It's not for paying costs in the farm. So if you're dipping into your own pocket to run your farm, it's time to cut down to a minimum number. Just cut it back to a bare minimum number that you can claim them payments. And that's it, and put it into payments in your pocket. And that's what we're telling our members. We have launched a flyer down there explaining this in the cattle and the sheep end of it, that you need to prioritise getting that single farm payment into your pocket. And if that means cutting your stock right back down to a minimum.
That's what you have to do.
That's what you have to do, and start from there, you know.
Kieran Delaney from the Irish Beef and Lamb Association and Kevin Comiskey from the IFA and of course Sean McNamara from the Irish Cattle and Sheep Farm Association. Thank you very much for joining us. Now we're going to pop back out just as the last few hours of the National Ploughing Championship are still underway and check what's happening with our team.
Hi, I'm Colin with Agriland and I'm here with Flora Ryan of the Irish Textile Society, and he's here to tell me a bit about how the breed has been performing in 2023 so far. So, Flora, how have they been going this year?
Textiles in general are going very well this year. Look at where the whole commercial sheep scene is going. We just weren't expecting the year we're after having with ram sales and that. The textile breed is in the country over 40 years now, but it has gone from strength to strength in the last 4 to 5 years. They've gone very, very popular. We've probably at record levels with membership in the textile breeders. I think we're in that 460, 480 bracket now of registered breeders in the country. So they're very popular with anyone signing up to breed new breed, pedigree breed. But as a breed themselves, look, they're bred for their lean meat and their extra muscling and their shape. They're putting that extra conformation into the carcass for factory lambs or butcher lambs, and they have that slightly better slightly higher kill-out rate in the factory. So they're hitting all those kind of bonuses with the producer groups and that, and they seem to hit the target just nicely. They're a great breed to work with. They're a very docile breed for farmers to use, and when the lambs off those Texel rams are born, they just seem to be that bit livelier when they're born, and they're up and sucking, and a bit less labour involved when using that ram. And also there's another wonderful thing they have throughout their life. They kind of have this worm resistance trait. They're a very clean sheep to work with. There's very little dagging that goes on with the breed when they're on their crossbred yos. So, and as regards the breed in the popularity, they're equally as popular with the hillman as the lowland yos, because the lambs are just so hardy. And I suppose, for want of a better word, you could call them a dual-purpose breed. They're very popular as regards Texel cross yos to use, or for producing the meat lamb in the factories of the butcher. So it's a kind of win-win on both sides, you know.
So, Flora, you just mentioned there that they might be suited to crossing with kind of more mountain breeds. So there would be good interest of the Texel all across the country, would there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Lowlands or highlands, very popular. When they're crossed on the horn yo in the mountains, the offspring is kind of known as the hill Tex yo, and they're very popular, and they're getting that premium in the marts, even as yo lambs or those Hugget yo sales that have been running on the last 2 or 3 months. Those good hill Tex yos are well fitted to make as much as any other.
And so, Flora, across the year then, you mentioned that Mart sales, factory sales, what kind of prices have farmers been expecting maybe for their spring lambs?
Sure, look, it probably started in the high there in the start of the year. You're getting into those. There's 2 Muslim festivals, that's Ramadan and the Eid festival. That there's a serious trade for lambs for those 2 festivals, and everything sells. But that Texel cross lamb will always get his premium, either mart or factory. And at the moment now, look, it's a little bit. It wouldn't be the most popular thing to be talking about. The lamb price is just not. It's probably €1 a kilo behind where it should be at the moment for the cost of production. But with the way of meal feeding, and like after a lot of rain at the moment, a lot of men have switched to meal feeding, and that's a very expensive way of finishing lambs. So but at the end of the day, when you're selling a batch of lambs, if you have Texel lambs in it, they'll hit the premium, and it'll be the most popular in the live market or in the factory or the butcher.
Yeah, that's certainly something I've been hearing from processors lately, is that there are lambs coming in underfinished, not as well fleshed as the factories would be looking for. But you're telling me that the Texel, it could potentially be avoiding all that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, if you put a Texel on your we'll say your traditional stuff across yo, that Tuller type yo or Boris yo, or put it on your horn yo, it'll have that little bit of bloom on it and an easy finish, and it's just when it's so clean as well, a bit less labour involved in dosing and all that. So the expenses kept to a minimum there.
And so recently there, you had the multi-breed ram sale from Sheep Ireland, where Texel was the most popular ram sold at the sale. So all those rams are now just gone all around the country, so you'd be expecting to see a good spread of them.
Ram sales this year have been very good, I have to say, and Texas in particular. Even in any of those multi-breeds, obviously the biggest multi-breed sales in the country now, run by Sheep Ireland. 600 rams in it. There was 170 or 80 Texels entered, 148 turned up, and 146 of them sold in the ring that day. So kind of, you talk about 99% clearance is unheard of for a lot of breeds, but it's just Texels were very, very popular on the day, and it's great to see farmers with putting such confidence in their breed. With the price of commercial lamb at the end of it, not as good as it should be, but it just seems to be a big switch to the breed, and they're obviously doing the job on the ground, and glad to be part of it, because I had sheep there myself, and look, it was just a wonderful sale, a lovely atmosphere, and people just buying what they want. But the idea of the multi-breed is that if most farmers will buy a couple of different breeds of rams and get them all, do all their shopping on the one day, plus to have the performance figures to match. And you're talking about sheep, out of the top 40% in the country, they're either 4 or 5 star. Happy 5 star in one of the categories, so you're talking sheep from the top 20% probably in the country. So, it's the sale has gained serious popularity because of that alone, and farmers are coming with the willpower to invest in the future in the lambs. Look, you buy a ram, pay your £1,000 or £1,200 for your ram on the day that happened on that day, but like any ram given a good service should be given 3, 4, 5 year service, and when that's split over his crop of lambs, it's not the most expensive thing in the world, and you know, they seem to be getting value for money when it's spread over the ram's lifetime.
And so for people keen to maybe get their hands on a Texel ram or a Texel ewe, would there be any upcoming sales maybe towards the end of the year or even 2024?
We have some 5 or 6 sales left for this year. They're what we call club sales. They're still, and we have a list there on the board behind you. But there's Karen Ross, Selvin, there's Rathone, Donegal have 2 more sales held. If you just follow Texel on Facebook or on their website or on the national press, there'll be always adverts for the sales to come up. But the ram sales finish up around that first, second week of October. And next year we'll be looking forward to our Premier sale again, starting on the 2nd Saturday of August. That's when it starts for our society. The 2nd of August every year is our Premier sale at Leston, and followed on 2 weeks later by the Sheep Ireland sale again, and the wheel keeps turning and on we go again.
Perfect.
We have in-lamb mule sales, I suppose, for anyone that's thinking about joining the breeding that. They're kind of all in December. The last 2 weeks of December, most of the in-lamb mule sales are. There's 7 of them for this year, I think, organised by the different regions, and you know, they're usually in-lamb shearings or ewe lambs, so that's where people can get some new stock to start their flocks or either put additions to their existing flocks, whatever.
Brilliant. Flor, thanks very much for telling me everything.
Much appreciated, and many thanks for coming and having us and having a chat, all right?
Thanks very much.
Man.
UPMC stand now with Luke and Kieran. So guys, can you just tell me, why should farmers be looking after their bodies?
Well, I suppose in the long run, rather than waiting until things get out of hand or their joints are too sore, looking after their bodies from the get-go, making sure they get more longevity out of their joints and just stay farming a bit longer.
Yeah, and like what I'd see in the UPMC sports surgery clinic is farmers kind of leave it a little bit too long and they come in and their knee, say for me, I see a lot of those, they come in with knee issues. And they've let it get so far where they've had to stop the farming. Whereas if they just tried to maybe get it looked at a little bit earlier, probably wouldn't have to stop the farming as much, and maybe could just get it sort of looked after a little bit earlier, be able to keep working away on the farm, and it wouldn't sort of hinder their life and their job.
And also, we spoke just before about like prevention being better than cure. So what kind of like common ailments, I suppose, have you seen farmers come in with apart from obviously knees?
Yeah, so the main one I would see anyways would be the knee pain, maybe some hip and ankle issues, and then Luke would be more around the shoulder areas.
Shoulder, lower back pain as well.
They'd be the main ones we'd see.
And what do you think farmers can do to kind of prevent it getting to a point where they, do have to stop farming, or they're just in agony the majority of the time?
Just sort of getting it seen to earlier than trying to just sit and wait it out and see if it goes away. If they go in and talk to a physio, talk to a doctor, anything, if they have one nearby that they could go in and talk to, just to get it ahead of it before it gets too bad for them.
And it doesn't always mean surgery either. A lot of time we can do forms of rehab as well, which will help get them back to pain-free activity then as well, rather than going for surgery straight away.
And for farmers that are experiencing those kind of pains, where can they find you guys?
Well, we're based up in Santry Sports Clinic, myself and Kieran. We also have bases in Whitfield, Odd-Even as well, and all over the country. So really linking in with any clinics and going from there, then they can get a referral down the pathway they need then.
Is there a long waiting time for farmers to come and go get a physio, or can they get seen to pretty quickly?
No, they can get seen to pretty quickly. It's especially with us in physio, we have specialists up there that'll be able to see them more specifically. They'd lean towards one would be specifically for knee, one for hip and groin and stuff like that, whereas then we have our juniors that are a little bit more available. They'd be able to sort of see a wide variety of things. So the waiting list wouldn't be too long. Exact dates wouldn't exactly know, but I'm sure that throughout all of our clinics the waiting times to see wouldn't be too high.
So basically they can't use that as an excuse then to say?
No,
definitely not.
Perfect, thank you very much guys.
No,
right, thank you.
Welcome back to the Agriland Pavilion here, sponsored by UPMC and Pearson Milking Technologies on the final day of the 2023 National Ploughing Championships. Now, two things that we know in Agriland that are always very popular with farmers up and down the country is anything that helps you save money and anything that makes a busy life a little easier. And I'm joined now on the Agriland stage by Pat Smith, who's the chair of the Micro Renewable Energy Federation, and also Kieran O'Donoghue, who's the Educational Outreach Manager with Agritech at Munster Technological University. So, Pat, first to you. Tell us why you can help farmers save money.
Well, I think some of your previous speakers there, I was just listening to them, and they were highlighting the fact that input costs are increasing massively. One of those inputs for most farms is high energy bills. And while historically energy and the cost of electricity was low, I think there's a new high, and farmers are well positioned to generate a lot of their own energy to reduce their cost of running their farms, but also of running their homes. And the business I'm in, Local Power Limited, is putting solar PV onto farms and businesses. The systems are sized so that they optimise the savings for the particular farmer. And now with the grants that are available through TAMS, there's a 60% grant available. They can get the VAT back, and they can write the balance off against their tax if they have a tax bill. Francis, as you know, it's a tough year in farming. It makes great economic sense. Not alone is it reducing costs, but it's also reducing carbon emissions on the farm. And it's very universal, isn't it? Yes. I see, we're well behind the curve here in Ireland. Solar PV has been adopted by other countries for a decade now, but it's never too late. And I think the farming community will adopt solar PV. A euro saved is as good as a euro earned. And the technology is very robust if you choose wisely. There's very low running costs of the technology. There's very low maintenance. It's very much related to the day length of the year, and the output is very predictable. So I see this being adopted by the farming community in great numbers going forward. And there are particular sectors that it's really advantageous for. Well, I think every farmer, even a suckler farmer, we heard about the sheep farmer speaking beforehand. Very often on a dry stock farm, the farm and the home is under one supply. The 60% TAMS grant covers the usage both in the home and the farm. And many of those businesses are also potentially have an income, an outside income piece, because of the nature of the business. They need an outside income to pay the bills. They could be paying tax at a high rate. So it's very attractive for every farmer. Obviously, dairy farmers, poultry farmers, pig farmers are higher energy users, and the systems may be higher. But this, in my humble opinion, if you do the maths, is an absolute no-brainer for all farmers to consider. Do you think it's been very important that TAMS3 took that on board? I think that a separate wallet of money so that the farmer is not impacting on his ability to spend in other sectors for solar PV was very important. There's 90 million set aside for the next 5 years. I think the Minister's going to have to revisit that figure as farmers learn about the opportunities in adopting solar PV for their businesses. But TAMS, it's a great support. It's a 60% support. That with the VAT back and having a tax write-off, you're into a 2 to 3 year payback. Now, if any farmer is told that with certainty that he can invest in something that's going to give him a 2 to 3 year payback, and if he chooses the right technology, has a warranted technology for up to 30 years, it's a very wise investment. Yeah. And Kieran, you're really at the cutting edge of some amazing technologies that are going to help farmers save probably time and money in the future, but it's also going to help them to adopt to new technologies too.
Yes, Francis, absolutely. I mean, the project we're working on, the Agritech cluster, it's based at the Munster Technological University, and we're funded by Enterprise Ireland with the aim of bringing companies that are, developing solutions, technology solutions for agriculture. We're looking at bringing those companies together with supports to help them to grow the companies, also connecting them with knowledge providers that can help them accelerate the development, and with the community, the farming community, to help them to test out, trial these technologies so that they can actually validate them. And I suppose, to Pat's point about the cost saving, it's always a big one in terms of technology adoption, particularly in farming, that you have to have, I suppose, with any technology, a case where you are, you need to be saving time, money, and first and foremost for a farmer to invest in a new technology. It needs to make sense financially, And are farmers very willing to embrace that? Are they early adopters? I think, look, it depends on the technology, I think for sure, right? Some of the technologies would be very much, let's say, if they're machine-based technologies, I think there's a bigger uptake maybe because, you know, it's coming, people are already using machines and there's like add-on technologies, say in the guise of a sensor, for example, that's giving you additional information. Then those technologies are quick to uptake. But I guess there's another suite maybe of technologies where you have maybe sensors connected to software solutions. Software solutions are on maybe available on your smartphone or tablet, and you're getting information, data from the farming practice around, you know, trying to, I suppose, understand what's happening in various areas, be it that feed input control, for example, and you're trying to use that data to make the right decision, and the softwares and the developments are trying to aid farmers to make those decisions effectively. But there are challenges with the uptake maybe of that technology because, you know, on the one hand, there's a lot of different offerings out there, so you can have lots of different applications for different types of use case, and I suppose one of the big challenges is trying to have that so that it's very usable. I think if the technology is user friendly and if there's a benefit for it, I think farmers will be more than happy to take on the technologies. We've seen that over the years. You know, we can see some technologies that have been adopted very quickly.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, what trends have you noticed? Like, what do you see coming through, particularly to Ireland here?
So like we've seen, like if we look back a few years during pandemic times, you know, technology came in and solved a number of challenges. Everything from going to the marts to sell animals, it went online very, very quickly. That technology was taken on immediately, had to be. So when there's an actual, I suppose, a problem or a challenge that needs to be solved, technology can be a big part of solving that challenge. And I suppose we're seeing it more and more now because, you know, the discussion is really deep now in terms of sustainability, in terms of environmental protection, and we feel, you know, in the work we're doing, that, you know, there's a big balancing act going on in terms of the need to produce more food because I suppose global population only in the recent past has passed 8 billion. When I was born, that was half, I think, not to give away the age too much. But look, at 4 billion, now it's 8 billion, and it's expected to go up to over 10 billion, I think, by 2030. So there's a need to produce more food. The availability of land is becoming less and less. So I guess there needs to be more productivity, and I suppose all that has to be done while reducing the impact on the environment. So it's a really difficult challenge, and I think technology solutions can be part of the solution there.
For both of you, the whole sustainability, climate challenges, that's a key factor now, and we've been talking about that all week, that is something that's really heavily preying on farmers. You know, we know that solar is more environmentally friendly.
Yeah, Francis, I think the whole debate in farming is that the farmer is part of the problem. And I think everyone that's involved in farming, I think, will accept that. But they're actually a much bigger part of the solution. And I think that that's where the focus has to move to identifying areas in which farmers can get involved and putting a cost on the issues and the policies that need to be put in place to help the farmer adopt. Because if you listen to Kieran, the world population is growing. You listen to the farmer, he's been curtailed from producing. And if you are the innocent bystander, you says, how do you bring
them together? Where's the common ground?
How do you bring them together?
Yeah.
And the history of Irish farming and the farming worldwide is that farmers are very willing to adopt and change. And with new research, new technologies, new advancements, I have no doubt the farming community in Ireland will turn this corner. They'll be able to move forward, deal with the environmental challenges that they have, but at the same time, continue to play their role in feeding the world population.
Yeah. Kieran, I'm curious, do the people who are coming up with the ideas, do they come from a farming background?
Sometimes, but there's a mix, to be honest. You know, I've spoken with companies today that have come from computer, you know, backgrounds, nothing to do with farming, but they've developed a piece of technology that's actually, you know, solving a problem in agriculture. So they've come into that. But there's quite a lot of the companies where the people in the companies have come from a farming background. Okay. And I think that's very interesting to see, and it's good to see, you know, because they already,
they see the problems, so they want to find a solution.
Absolutely, yeah.
And tell me, what have been some of the more exciting developments that you've seen, or maybe you could sort of let us into some secrets about what they're working on?
Yeah, look, I guess I've been over in the Enterprise Ireland innovation arena, the last number of days, and I'm involved in the judging panel for the Innovation Awards. And look, I mean, it's great to see, I suppose, the growth and the innovations over the last few years in particular, and the number of new companies that are coming, number of new ideas that are being developed. The overall winner this year is it's a product called GrassMax, and it's around automating grass measurement. So particular use cases is with dairy farmers where they need to go out, maybe on a Monday morning and take a physical grass measurement. So GrassMax have developed this solution where it can be automated using satellite and imagery, and using that information to actually calculate the dry matter content of the grass, at a point in time that's usable for the farmer. So where that can help, I suppose, is that can save time, and that's
and that is a key. It is. We always come back to saving time, saving money, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and that's one particular example, and there's a lot of I suppose information being gathered, from different systems, be it sensors or be it from camera technologies, even from satellites, as I mentioned, and it's a lot of the companies are looking at how can they use these data points to actually learn about, to be able to do programming to see can they actually predict what should be done next based on how things are now, So there's a lot of work going into software algorithms to help farmers make effective, timely decisions.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of work over the next years we're going to see where that offering for farmers will become much more, I suppose, transparent in what it can do, and it's exciting at the moment to be involved in these kind of discussions with companies,
Yeah. Now, I hate to bring politics into the mix, but we always have to know that it's in the background. So is there more the government could be encouraging people to do, farmers to do, from an investment point of view, from encouraging farmers to take up a new technology path?
I suppose the first thing, and Teagasc have done a good job, and the agricultural consultants, I suppose, an increasingly important role to play in this regard. Getting good research and information out to farmers. They will adopt it. And that's the record over a lot of years. There's always more the government should be doing.
Yeah.
But in fairness, the Exchequer's putting a big chunk of change into Teagasc to be doing the necessary research and development to ensure that the challenges that are facing the farming community today are dealt with from a scientific perspective. People like Kieran and other businesses out there are always trying to innovate to make a bob, and if the technology makes sense and that it's economically viable or it saves time for the farmer, well, definitely they'll adopt and they'll invest.
Yeah.
So it's an evolution.
Startups love finance, though, don't they?
They do, and I think there's quite a lot of opportunities for companies to avail of funding. So say through, I suppose for early stage startups, you might be talking to your local enterprise office. They maybe also talking to Enterprise Ireland and other organisations, other state organisations. There's very good, I suppose, support to develop an idea. So everything from an innovation voucher, which is a €5,000 support to engage with an external researcher to maybe develop a prototype, or to, if you don't have the expertise yourself, you can engage that external support through the various technology centres and gateways that are, I suppose, located across all the universities across Ireland.
And one thing I'd say about that, Kieran, and have been a startup myself, and looking around to see where I can get a bit of help. Sometimes they'll give you the voucher, for example, but you don't need to spend the 5,000 on a researcher. You need to spend the 5,000 on getting some equipment to get your business going. And the hoops that's required, they need to be simplified. The money should be got to the new startup as quickly as possible without having to spend 10,000 to get 5,000.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a fair point, because, I mean, there's a lot of supports there. There's a lot of administration to get access to it. But I suppose, look, at the end of the day, it's trying to set it out so that you can give enough opportunities to the companies to grow, but then I suppose, and this is I suppose where we come in quite a bit, is trying to connect companies with the right supports, because we've seen there talking to companies, you can spend a lot of time trying to go down maybe an innovation route or innovation voucher route, maybe then trying another route. And I think one of the things we're trying to do is signpost companies to the right support so that they can get the best value. If it's a capital support, to get some capital injection, there's a particular way you can go to access funding there. But there's quite a lot of funding available. One of the things is there is a lot of work to go to get that, and some companies often question, do I spend my time getting that, or do I spend my time developing the business? And that can be a challenge, because it's really a busy time when you're doing that, and the early startup stage is quite difficult to get to the point, where you're a couple of years in and you have a revenue stream coming in for the company, And what we've seen quite a bit is companies get so far as well, and they have a very nice idea, very nice technology. And after maybe an initial injection of funding from whatever seed funding that they've got, they might run out of runway. And I think it's important to look at that. One of the things we're trying to look at is see how do we nurture that idea further and help them to access supports that can help them to actually get over the line and start to grow more jobs in Ireland and start to offer these technologies and to refine them, so there's a big uptake,
Yeah. We're just going to, before we wrap up, because it is a fascinating subject and it's always something that our audience is very keen to hear of. Pat, you've got a very special competition running with Agriland now, 4 National Ploughing Championships.
Francis, we have indeed, and delighted to be a partner with Agriland to offer a €25,000 solar PV and battery storage system to one lucky winner. We've got some support from SolarWatt. We all try to offer European warranted technology. SolarWatt are a German company. The panels they provide come with 30-year product and 30-year performance warranties. And we've also My Energy, a UK company who are basically specialised in battery storage, water heating. So the combined technologies should, for one lucky winner, will provide enough energy to run their home, or certainly a good bit to help run on their farm.
Well, Pat Smith from the Micro and Renewable Energy Federation, and also Kieran O'Donoghue, thank you so much for joining us on the Agriland stage here this afternoon. And that's it. We're going to pop out and just see, for the very few last minutes of the Ploughing Championships, what's happening outside.
So we're here today at Plowing 2023, and I'm joined by certified Irish Angus Charles Smith. Charles, can you tell us what's happening at the stand here today?
This evening, Bethany, we're going to present 25 calves to 5 groups of students that have been competing in the Certified Irish Angus School competition since almost this time last year. They would have submitted a video by last November. We would have reviewed the videos. We got 174 videos in. We reviewed them down to 70. We interviewed 70 groups of students just after Christmas. Then after the interviews, we cut that down to 35, which we brought to Croke Park for an exhibition where they explained their ideas to a panel of independent judges. And then, as a result of that adjudication, we end up with these 5 groups of students winning the calves here today, which they'll take home and bring right through the production cycle to finishing in November 2024.
There's a lot of students and a lot of schools involved here today. What kind of topics are the students looking into for their research projects?
So it's amazing the difference in the subjects that the students present to us. Everything from mental health, physical health among farmers, health and safety, genetics, animal performance, using grass and using grass efficiently as a source of producing beef. All of those subjects, these students are very young and they've done a massive amount of research into all of those subjects, and we've tailored it down to a small number of items for each group of students, which makes it manageable for them to use and to be able to use the calves to protract all of that information and do a lot of learning over the next year or year and a half.
And of course it's important to mention, Charles, that there's a lot of students involved in this that are not from farming backgrounds, and I suppose it really gives them an opportunity to learn more about the beef that is produced here in Ireland, in particular the Angus beef.
Yeah, so one of the great things is we've had students from cities and towns that are completely removed. Even the school is completely removed from agriculture and from food production. And this gives a massive opportunity for that whole community to understand more about the production of food, not just the production of livestock, but the production of food in general. And it creates an enthusiastic approach to agriculture and food production, and it marries the two together. The live calves going into the schools and all that brings together that community to understand food production as a whole, that it's not just supermarkets and that farmers are not just, you know, another section of society that's removed from them, that agriculture and farmers are very much part of their everyday life and a big requirement for the subsistence of that everyday life.
Charles, thank you very much.
Thanks, Breffney.
From Farm Security Services. So Pat, can you just tell us a bit about what you guys do?
Yeah, well, basically we just totally concentrate on farmyard security for the past 15 years through every county in Ireland, and it's changed over the years. We go from calving cameras originally mostly to lambing, foaling, but nowadays there's an awful lot of inquiries on security. Security has probably gone pretty popular at the moment, and there's different ways of doing it. Everyone thinks camera. We have a lot of smart cameras here, as in auto trackers, follow people, follow vehicles, follow bikes, motorbikes, anything that moves that's a danger. But the auto tracking cameras, they're good, but otherwise if they were that good, farms wouldn't be robbed every night across the country. So we have a very smart sensor system that works really, really well. The difference with the sensor system, if they're totally 100% accurate on people, people that does the damage in general. So if someone comes into your yard at 3 o'clock in the morning and you have a very good camera, you might catch someone, you might not. It's hit and miss. They have hoodies, they're going to rob you anyway. But the sensor system, if the same 2 guys or 3 guys come in at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're going to know they're there. And that's the most important part of farm security. You've got to know when someone is in your yard. So in general, a lot of farmyards are isolated areas nowadays anyway. So you really got to know when someone is there. And with the smart sensors, they're about 99% accurate to telling you that. And they'll tell you which part of the yard intruder has come in. And you arm this from your phone, you disarm it from your phone, and they're so smart at the moment that even if someone kills your electricity and kills your internet, and you have them armed, they still work.
So obviously there's been quite a high rate of rural crime. And with that, have you seen an increase in your products being sold, or how has that correlated? Should it really worked?
Oh yeah, for sure. The security thing has, that has improved or has got more popular by a long way, yeah, because of the fact that people are actually being robbed. Not today, tomorrow, but eventually a lot of people are getting robbed, yeah.
And what else do you think people can do to really just, I suppose, knuckle down on their farm security and prevent further incidents?
Well, sure, there's the obvious, locking gates and that, but the obvious over the years hasn't really worked. So you got to just think outside the box a bit. And we've been pretty busy here at the Plowing for the last good few years, and it has always been the same: camera, everyone thinks cameras. But if cameras were the real deal, people wouldn't be in as big as trouble as they are today. They're good, and they're better than the work and the way they are nowadays. They're very good, but they won't solve the problem on their own. But we have a package here where something like an auto tracking camera with the smart sensor system, we find that works pretty good when it's installed. If the person operates it properly, it works very good.
So the smart sensor system, does that connect up to your phone then?
Yeah, it's all done through the app, and you have you can put as many sensors, whatever, in your yard, depends on your yard, but they all can talk or back to the base station up to 1,000 meters. So you can put them actually anywhere in the farmyard, and they're all battery operated for 7 years mostly, and so you can actually put them up anywhere you need to. But they have a 30-meter pickup, 180 degree of an angle, and they are about 99% accurate to either a person or a vehicle. Like the usual dogs, foxes, cats, they ignore all that, so they're pretty smart. And the way it all works, you can have the gate, all that area armed, and other parts of the yard disarmed. And there's a lot of things. You can turn on lights, machinery. You can do a lot with this. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Cheers.
Colin with Agriland, and I'm here at the National Ploughing Championships with Philip Maguire from the Wicklow Cheviot sheep breeders. Wicklow sheep, how are they doing this year? Conditions, I know, aren't great around the country, but maybe this sheep breed is more suited to that kind of a weather. Philip?
Well, they are, Colin, they're a traditional breed, mostly found in County Wicklow, but in the surrounding counties, typically found on the mountain areas of Wicklow and South Dublin and Carlow, maybe North Wexford, but as I say, they're a traditional breed, well used to hills, well used to outdoor conditions, and they're fairly hardy for those type of areas.
And so the Wicklow Cheviot, Philip, what other kind of characteristics would the breed have then?
Well, they're a good big sheep, as you can see. They're, you know, hardy for the hills, and they're excellent mothers. Absolutely great mothers, and you know, they play their role in the whole sheep industry in Ireland. They're great when they're crossed with, say, for example, a Suffolk ram to produce a kind of a Suffolk cross, which is an excellent lamb either for meat or for Suffolk Cross hoggets make premium prices at our sales for further breeding. And
so, so a good mix of a good mothering as well would come into it, and then when mixed, you'd get that more sturdy lamb then as well. So, has there been a good display of lambs this year then? Particularly maybe at the marts, would they be fetching good prices then, Philip?
Yeah, it's been an excellent year for the Cheviots. Obviously, you get a wide range depending on your budget or depending on what type you want, but certainly on the upper end, we've had yo lambs making over €250 each. And the Hogged Yo is selling very well. Our recent show and sale in Blessington, for example, there was a number of pens of Cheviot Yos made over €300. And 3 and 4 year old Yos are making up to around €230.
So the show would be a success each year, but would there be any other shows around the country that the Wicklow Cheviot would be quite popular in?
Yeah, well, other shows be, again, in the Wicklow area, there'd be Carnew, Baltinglass, other places like that. The Wicklow Cheviot is actually quite popular as well up in Donegal, and there's other pockets around the west and in certain mountainous areas where you will come across you know, the Wicklow Cheviot sheep.
So yeah, so you'd have a good interest from all across the country, just maybe from those areas that are a bit tougher maybe to be grazing sheep on, but the Wicklow Cheviot would be more suitable for those areas then.
She would be, absolutely, and you know, in harsh winter conditions they can survive pretty well outside, and you know, in the east of Ireland where we often can get snow, and again, even like times during the beast from the east and bad snows that we've had, that you'll find that the Wicklow Cheviot Yo can withstand outdoor lambing and whatnot, you know.
And Philip, just a little while ago, I understand the Wicklow Cheviot, a few of them were used at the international sheepdog trials in Wicklow. Was that a good choice for the organisation to make to use the breed?
Absolutely, we got nothing but praise for the standard of sheep that were, you know, used at the dog trials. But really at dog trials what they're looking for is uniformity, so it's more or less the same sheep for every competitor. And thanks to one of our fellow breeders, Andy Corrigan, he was able to supply a range of Wicklow Cheviot Yos, and I think they performed pretty well for the dog handlers. Yeah.
And they all behaved, and I'm sure they were all well trained. They're all used to sheepdogs, or was it their first time?
Yeah, they'd be used to sheepdogs, but they responded pretty well. You know, they're that type of sheep that you know, they'll test the dog, and so that's what the handlers wanted, though, to be tested on a course. So ultimately, the best handler would win.
And Philip, you mentioned uniformity there. Would the Yos that we have here, would they be kind of showing off that uniformity? What are we looking at here then? Are they the best of the bunch, really?
Yeah, well, we have a great sample here of Cheviot Yos. You know, they're a good big Yo. They've excellent wool, and they're a good size. So that's what you're looking for in a good Cheviot Yo.
And so if anyone is coming along to have a look at the the O's here, maybe they might be coming back at a date maybe later in the year or next year to look into the Wicklow Cheviot. Any upcoming sales or shows to?
Absolutely. Well, every Tuesday there's sales on, for example, in Blessington and other marts such as Bolton Glass, Carnew will always have Cheviot sheep. And on the 7th of October we have our ram sale, or ram show on sale, which is the big event for the Cheviot sheep. And then for the 2 Saturdays after the 7th, on the 14th and the 21st, there'll be Cheviot rams on offer as well.
And so you'd be, I suppose, keen to get people to maybe look into a native Irish breed, which I suppose it's not too common if people are opting for other maybe continental breeds.
They are, but I think the Cheviot sheep have their place, as I say, in the Irish sheep industry. So they play a role, particularly in sort of upland areas. Yeah.
Oh no, Philip, thanks very much for telling us about the lovely selection you have here. And yeah, thanks. Back to Agriland then.
Welcome back to the Agriland Pavilion for our live stream in association with UPMC and, of course, Pearson Milking Technology. And thanks to Francis earlier, I'm now back in the hot seat again, and I'm joined for our live panel discussion on all things contracting and machinery. I'm joined now by Anne Gleeson-Hanrahan. You're the Managing Director of FCI, and Timmy O'Brien, you're an FTMTA member, a dealer and an importer. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. First of all, so I'll go to yourself, Timmy, as an FTMTA member. What are you hearing through the trade, from other members regarding business overall this year?
Business has been back overall, but since I came to the Ploughing Championships here, there's a very positive vibe out there, a lot more positive than I expected. A lot of people have come on the stand and they've been talking about machinery, nearly more so than last year. Even people had a very good year last year and this year. But in general, they've been more than positive about it, and I can see a good future. A lot of people are very happy to see us displaying after they come into the show. They're on that there could be more machinery here even.
And in terms of, at various shows that you go to where there's machinery stands, sometimes they can be lucrative, sometimes it's just about meeting people and maybe not making the sales. Are you finding that you're making good connections, in terms of yourself and other traders who are actually making connections with potential sales out of it?
Oh, definitely, definitely. We are making big connections in the last while. We're getting more recognised.
There's more than tyre kickers around, so.
Yeah, there is. We've had very good people, and a lot of people that are coming to the stand seem to have their homework done before they come to us now. Because when you start saying something, they'd say, well, we've looked at that online and we like what we see.
Yeah.
So that would be in the general go of it, really.
And moving to the contractors, what would you say is the biggest challenge amongst the contracting trade at the minute?
One of the biggest challenges is the increase in price in diesel. Diesel is our main fuel, as you well know. And since February this year alone, diesel has increased by 14 cents a litre. That's including excise duty, but excluding VAT. So, with that equates to 50 million extra amongst our contractors. So this is obviously proven to be challenging.
Yeah, because where are contractors getting that extra money? Well, most don't have it in their back pockets.
They don't, no, they don't have it in their back pockets. And we do need, also you may look at parts as another extra. So the parts have gone up, increased by some parts up to 100%. Which is a huge increase, and machinery have increased as well 30% since 2019. So it is proven to be very challenging for agricultural contractors.
I suppose, in terms of going back to the dealer side of things rather than the farmer side of things, Timmy, during COVID-19 we had problems with the supply chain. There were delays, components issues. Now, global events affected that. a big ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal affected that.
Yes.
But have things now eased? Can potential farmer buyers expect a shorter time frame to get what they want now?
Yes, like up a year and a half ago, if you ordered something, it could be 12 months. Now that lead time has gone to 4 to 5 months for a new custom-made vehicle, like a vacuum tank. Just take that, for instance. Like we were gone from 11, 13 months at one stage, which when people would hear that, they'd just go, no.
Yeah. It's too long of a wait, I suppose, if you're trying to plan your budget for the year and it's going to be over the year before you get machine. Like, I mean, you'd want to be planning well in advance if you knew you needed it.
In general, farmers, if they decide they want something, they like to get it.
Yeah. So are farmers coming into you, as you said, they kind of have they have their research done on what they're looking for.
Yes,
so presumably they have their research done as well on the finances side of things, and they know they might have to wait, the 6 months for it, but they have accounted for that in the whole budget for the year.
Yeah. Actually, recently now people are actually surprised that the lead time is after being cut so much. They were expecting, say, when they'd phone you up about something, they'd expect you to say, well, it could be 6 to 8 months. And you'd say, well, we probably would have it in 4 to 5 months.
And are they coming to dealers finance ready?
A lot are, and a lot are expecting the dealer to find the finance for them.
Oh.
But, that comes with a cost all the time. And a lot of them would have their own banks ready, or else you'd recommend them to a finance house. In general, there don't seem to be any problem with financing machines at the moment.
Okay. And going back to the contractors and the supports that they can access. Now, I know over the years there have been a lot of calls for contractors to be included in various schemes and so on, but they can be excluded from some government supports. And what should they be able to access?
Agricultural contractors don't receive any supports from government. They should be able to access the same supports. Like, we are an agricultural entity and sector, so we should be able to access the same supports as maybe farmers. Not just to say take from the farmers, let the farmers have their supports, but we should receive supports as well.
Well, agricultural contracting is a very vital part of
it is
agriculture,
vital,
for food production.
Yes.
If you don't have the contractors in spreading slurry, tillage contractors in with the harvest, any, cutting silage, farmers can't do it themselves.
No, they
Some
can't.
can on a small scale, but for the majority of farmers, they have to get contractors in.
Oh, it would, because the level of, the size of the machines that we would be using on farms, it wouldn't justify a farmer to purchase some of the machines that we would have, as Timmy would well know. And so that would be some major challenge. Now, speaking of the slurry, we have requested from the Minister to extend the slurry date this year back up to October.
Because it's been very difficult for contractors. They're looking at this deadline of October, and they're it's nearly a noose around their neck, and they're flying from pillar to post to try and get it done before then. But the weather hasn't played ball.
No, it has not, and you couldn't be entering fields in this weather. Like, even though the law says you can spread slurry this weather, but the field conditions are not up for it. And we really do need an extension, and an extension without any, say, limitations. It's just the extension right up to the 15th to allow that we get these tanks emptied, because otherwise farmers are going to be with tanks full well before the opening period.
This is true, and we are expecting some sort of an announcement on the deadline for slurry spreading, possibly by tomorrow, coming from the department. But
the minister,
will as you said there, will that have conditions? Is the question.
Yes, that is the question. The Minister has, guarantees that he will make the announcement tomorrow. The decision will be tomorrow. But we're hoping, I've heard now since that there's going to be conditions on it, but we're hoping that he will not have any conditions, because it does need to be spread between this and the 15th.
In terms of machinery prices then, be it for the likes of contractors, big purchases, sometimes, multiple purchases, or just a farmer renewing his tractor, or, his harvest machine, or his, whatever it may be, might be even only a trailer. But what about machinery prices, Timmy? I mean, that's the biggest complaint that you'll say farmers had, that, the machinery prices really shot up. But is there a pulling back, although maybe not to pull them back, but for the price that machinery is going now, are dealers offering a bit more with it to soften the blow?
Yes, the dealers are beginning to take a hit on the machines as well, because like the cost of production has gone through the roof throughout the whole of Europe, and like in the last number of years, production costs and sales costs have gone up by 40% and more, and like that's totally unsustainable going into the future. So like recently now, the costs seem to be leveling out, but I can't really see them coming back because the price of steel isn't really back. Labour has gone up across Europe in a big way. Energy costs have gone up in a big way. But the only thing we can hope for going forward is that they level out and hold steady for a while.
And what would you say would be, if you were to give advice now, what would you say would be the most maybe cost-efficient piece of machinery that a standard farmer could buy now?
Most efficient is probably, well, you have to start out with your tractor.
Yeah.
And for every tractor, there's a lot of implements wanted. And it's very hard to pick one single piece of equipment for that. It depends on the farmer's needs. Some farmers need fertilizer spreaders. There's a lot of talk of going down the road of GPS spreading and all this with the nitrates and having accuracy and variable rate spreaders. That's all very possible today with the technology that's out there, and it can be done very efficient. That would probably be a good investment for farmers today, but it depends on everybody's needs. Every farmer likes something different. It would be very hard to pick an individual. I'd be in and out of a lot of yards in the agri-contracting. You'd have some farmers who'd say they should only have a sweeping brush and a shovel. Other farmers like to have a lot of equipment in their yard. Probably the most efficient farmers are using contractors, because contractors can run very efficiently, are getting the most use out of their machinery, and they're very well maintained. And on health and safety grounds and everything, a contractor is a good bet too. Because you just take, for instance, here now, you have a farmer and he's under a lot of pressure. They seem to be taking on more and more land, more cattle. They'd put an agitator running and they'd run up to wash the milking machine or something. And in general, it's the farmers who have the accidents more than the contractors, because they come down, they see something wrong, they're rushing. Whereas the contractors there, he've a man up in it, he've the man told, do not go inside that tank for at least 30 to 45 minutes. Leave it running. And the guards are proper, everything is right. Whereas like a lot of farmers are under a lot of time constraint and they are working very hard and they're trying to save as much as they can. But on that aspect, I feel that
contracting is the way to go. And in terms of the contracting, and I mentioned machinery prices there to Timmy, but in terms of contracting prices, I know the FCI, the contractors, have been trying to keep the prices at a level that's sustainable for themselves, but also, keeping long-time customers and farmer clients happy too. But at the same time, costs are going up and have been, as you mentioned earlier on, with the diesel. Like there's only a certain base that they can go to before they're losing money.
Yes, well, you see, the margins are very tight in contractors, and especially with the costs that have risen to the level they have risen, and it's becoming not sustainable. Like at the end of the year, it will not be sustainable to stay going at those levels. Now we appreciate the farmers are not getting the figure, or say the payments that they have. Milk prices have dropped, grain prices have dropped, all of this. So it's very hard for everyone to get the balance.
And there's even delayed payments from the department this year.
Yes.
They might have planned to give the cheque to the contractor on a certain date, but that'll have to wait now as well.
It will, yes, and it means that the contractors to try and carry that cost, or say that wait time, which is very difficult. Like bank interest rates aren't cheap. It is hard to balance the lot. Now, another thing too is that when you speak of labour costs have gone up considerably, and there's a serious shortage of skilled labour in agricultural contractors. There is a serious need for training. Training is for skilled workers and drivers is really needed badly, so it is.
And I know that I've seen around the country, Timmy, and it seems to be a trend maybe coming from some of the bigger names, you know, maybe the big three or bigger, but some dealers are there sort of, what's the word, consolidating kind of dealerships and things like that, and maybe the more local independent dealer that was once there is getting that little bit smaller in area, the numbers of them speckled around the country. Yes. Now you have many hats. You have a hat on today, but you have many hats. Your own business, agri-contracting, you deal, you import as well, SAMAS. And how did you encourage, because I mean, no more than the challenges that Anne has outlined there for contracting, your family have come along and joined you in your business. Yes. And that's not an easy feat to get young people nowadays into challenging industries.
No, it's not, but they grew up with it. They always grew up with change in my place because we moved on. We started out small and we got more expanded all the time in the agri-contracting. And suddenly I was out in Agritechnica years ago and I just see these machines, the SAMAS machines, and I liked them. And I went to a lot of people, friends of mine that were at the show, and I used to be saying to them, go and look at them. I said they look fine, and I took on the agency, and then we took on more, and it's developed from there. Now we're taking on dealers and distributing into other dealers. But like, we're a very small company in a big pond.
And it's family run, Thomas, Nora, Sharon, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. And like, we're just trying our best to keep it going. And I see dealing with small dealers is brilliant.
Yeah.
Because like, a lot of people appreciate in our own area that we have set up because they can get stuff closer than they had to. Like, with the big consolidation of dealers, there's a long distance to go for parts, or when you break down, that's a major problem. Or a lot of it is, we'll have the part tomorrow. We try to have the part on the shelf if we can. Yeah. Because like, if you're broke down, you need to go.
Yeah. Especially at the minute when time frames are tight because the weather hasn't been playing ball.
I can see it from a contractor's point of view. When I'm selling and distributing now, I'd say, well, you need this and this, because we use the machinery ourselves and we know where the pitfalls are and where the good points are.
Yeah. And finally, I might just ask you about the budget then. What could be done for contractors in the budget to try and help them? Because as you mentioned earlier, they don't get anything.
They get nothing. In the budget, we do need to be getting some sort of support. In order, if they want contractors to continue in contracting, like our age profile is, say, you could say 50 up, couldn't you, Timmy?
You could.
And it's very difficult. I know we're contractors ourselves, and we have one son who's interested in it, but it's very difficult.
Well, you're lucky then to have your son.
Yes, I am lucky.
Because you could have no son interested in it.
There's a number of, say, contractors around me that have nobody. Yeah. And, like, it is because, like, my son now has 2 children of his own, like, and they need a family allowance for them to survive. And we really do need supports, say, for agricultural contractors, for them to be able to stay going, because these costs have risen to a level that is just not sustainable.
Yeah. And the excise on fuel as well.
Yes, yes. Like farmers get supports, contractors get no supports. Really and truly, we do need supports. We need recognition and a register put together, and we need supports. That's what you do.
Well, Minister for Finance Paschal Donoghue is around the ploughing site today. We've been chasing him down, trying to pin him down all day to see what he is going to do for agriculture in the budget. He's remaining quite tight-lipped, but we will be putting that question to him, and I believe the Tánaiste Micheál Martin has arrived as well. So these are all questions that need to be posed to the government at the moment.
The number of contractors, especially last year, that are getting out of the business is phenomenal. Like, and they're not being replaced. So who's going to do the work? Contractors are under pressure with work as it is. Like, we launched a book there, as you said, a little leaflet back earlier in the year, and we have the list of the contractors in each county in it. And in that book, there's contractors who do not want their name put in for the simple reason they don't want any more work. They wouldn't be able to handle it. So like these problems have
And as we mentioned at the very outset there, it's a vital part of the food production supply chain.
Correct.
Really, you know, I've heard it about agri-mechanicking as well. Like it's impossible to get young mechanics to come in and learn about, and they're still needed.
Yes,
you know, we might be moving electric, but there's still mechanics needed. You know, like most machinery still is a diesel combustion engine at the end of the day. Like.
It's all nuts and bolts at the end of the day,
Yes.
and there should definitely be encouraged to enter apprenticeships. I would be looking for people to take on apprenticeships at the moment, and it's impossible to find real good, interested lads in it.
Yeah.
Because there is this thing in the last number of years that you go to college, but to get people to do apprenticeships, they can actually earn more than a person that spent 5 years in college, and they're paid while they're training, and they're paid by force while they go to the college and all.
Yeah.
And like, there have to be support brought down the road for those apprentices to bring them on board and get all these people into the production line as such.
Well, we have to leave it there. And Gleeson Hanrahan from FCI and Timmy O'Brien, an FTMTME member and dealer and importer. Thank you very much for joining us on our live panel discussion. We're coming close to the end of our live stream here. Usually on the Thursday, it can die off a little bit around lunchtime, but because the sun shines out today, it's still very busy on the ploughing site. So let's head back out to the Agriland team and see what they're up to.
Joined with Tom and Cormac, who I believe are past ploughers and have also been ploughing this week. So, Cormac, tell me, how did your ploughing go and what were you in?
I was ploughing in the under-28 class on Tuesday, and it was very wet out there. And I came second in that class, so it didn't go on too bad after all.
That's definitely not too
weather.
bad. Yeah, so how did the bad weather affect your ploughing?
Sure, we were climbing up a small bit of a hill there, and we were slightly spinning going up, and traction was hard on the day. And
do you think if the conditions had been a bit better, you might have squeezed in first place? Or?
Sure, we would have tried it anyway if it was a bit better anyway. Because they out and ploughing it now, and with all that wet after the weekend being wet as well. And
yeah, it's not exactly been prime conditions leading up to it,
no,
has it?
hasn't. The ground is fairly mucky out there now, so.
And do you live far away from here where you normally practice ploughing? And just
No, we're only from outside Port Leash there.
Oh, okay, so what's the ground difference? Does that really make a difference? Or is it
No, we'll be
similar?
used to this sort of ground over here now. We over here a good bit ploughing in the county, so.
And Tom, you didn't come this year, you didn't qualify, so do you want to just tell us a little bit about how you normally end up here and what happened this year?
Well, for the last, I have to plough here in this reversible class for the last 3 years. This year I didn't qualify, I was beaten by another competitor by a couple of marks. And so I came here and I'm going to give it one good lash again to see can I be back here again next year. And so that's why I'm hoping to pick up tips from the ploughman today. So that's what's the reason I'm here today. But we'll be very much involved in the ploughing here. I just live out 2 miles away from here. This is my parish, and I know all these fields here well and everything like that. And we enjoyed ploughing. My son and daughter is involved in the ploughing as well, and they plough as well, and they've after ploughing in a couple of All-Irelands as well. And sure, it's an expensive game, but we enjoy it.
It's the main thing.
Yes, we enjoy it.
And from looking at these guys over here, who at the minute is your favourite, do you think, from what you can currently say?
I'd say the man from Wexford here is very good. I think he's after winning the last couple of years. He's very good. He had a good split out. Now he's doing the butts, which I'd be interested in looking at to see the way he's doing it, see can I improve the way he's doing it. And he's a very good job done. But there's 2 or 3 other people there now, and the man from Cork is very good as well. No, they're all doing a good job today. It's a lovely day for it now. It's really a nice day for the ploughing today.
It's much better than earlier in the week.
It's good and dry, so it is.
And what are judges specifically looking for? Because obviously they want straight lines and nothing really on show, but what do you think gives some of them just like that extra bit?
Straightness is the big thing. Straightness is the big thing, and to have the ploughing level is another thing. You want to have the matching sods matched together. And
uniformly the whole way across all the sods.
Okay.
So you do have them all looking the same and everything matching in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have.
But it's a great honour for Laois to have a young man like this coming second in All Ireland.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a great honour for even like me to say that I ploughed in All Ireland. You know, I'm going on a bit in age, but sure, it's great to be able to do it.
Perfect.
You know.
Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Cheers.
So I'm chatting to Brett Brandon of Brandon Bioscience in the Innovation Hub at the Plowing Match 2023. Brett, from a more general perspective to start with, what is innovation and new technology really providing for or delivering for Irish farmers?
I guess, Richard, the big push is all about sustainability and what we can do to sort of counteract the sort of nitrates regulations and those sort of things that are coming down the track. So it's now all about no longer talking about it, but delivering real solutions and that sort of thing. So what we're doing here at Brandon Bioscience, I think we're actually trying to deliver on some of those issues and provide farmers with real solutions.
Okay, well tell me just a little bit about the company, about Brandon Sciences, what the services that you offer.
Okay, so Brandon Bioscience, we've been in business for about 25 years. What we've done now is we've been able to identify within our biostimulant package which ones are doing what within certain plants and certain crops. So we're really targeting the technology to give farmers real solutions, that sort of thing. So from the point of view of the product that we're here today to promote is our PSI 362, and it's all about increasing nitrogen use efficiency. So that's a key issue for farmers now. They've been told to use less nitrogen. So how do we recover some of that yield from less nitrogen? You use a biostimulant like PSI 362.
Do farmers, though, have the actual technology within their own businesses at the moment to make use of what you're offering and other companies like you would be offering?
Yeah, look, I guess that's the critical issue there. There's lots of things on the periphery that farmers are being told about and told they need to do. This sort of stuff now, like PSI 362, it's available for farmers at farm level. Yeah, like it's there. Some of these things are just sitting on the shelf ready to be taken away and adopted by farmers.
And the payback the farmers will get from this commitment, what are we talking about?
Look, there's going to be that sort of push where they have to use 20% less nitrogen. Okay, so just if we cut nitrogen by 20%, there's a yield penalty. So how do we make that up? So that's that payback from using a product like ours. We're going to bridge that gap that 20% less nitrogen means. So.
And are these products equally applicable to tillage crops and grass?
Absolutely, yeah. Look, we've done reams and reams of research and trial after trial to prove the concept and the mode of action. And it works across grassland, works across barley, wheat, oilseed rape. So the key there is that we can bridge that yield gap.
And the application method, the route to getting these products onto the crop is?
So we've got several mechanisms there, or several methods of delivering the technology to farmers. So the one solution is using it with a granular nitrogen product sort of thing. So the idea is that the biostimulant and the nitrogen go out simultaneously so that you get uptake of that extra nitrogen or that nitrogen that's available. So you can also use it in a liquid formulation and apply it. If you're applying liquid fertilisers, liquid nitrogens, you can add the liquids directly into that liquid formulation and it'll work that way.
You've used the term biostimulant.
Yep.
On a couple of occasions in this conversation. What exactly is a biostimulant?
Okay, so basically they're naturally derived products that will actually turn on different plant reactions, receptors, those sort of things. So, and they can be sourced from different natural products. So we're using a seaweed extract, that's the thing, and over the course of lots of research, we've identified within that seaweed extract what the molecular makeup is and what those molecules do within different plants. There are others such as fulvic acids and humic acids and that sort of thing, but we're concentrating on our seaweed extracts.
So what attracted you to seaweed in the first place as a source of a biostimulant?
I guess it's a natural raw material that's on the coast of Ireland and the North Atlantic, that sort of thing. So it's available to us, and the seaweed we're using has a really good molecular makeup. Can we pause there? Because I've lost my chance. What's that? Yeah, that's it. Yep.
What was the question? So yeah, what attracted you, what drew you to seaweed in the first place as a source of biostimulants?
Yep, look, we've done reams and reams of research, intensive research there. We've identified the molecules and the unique molecular makeup of the seaweed. The seaweed we're using is Ascophyllum nodosaurum, and it comes out of that intertidal zone sort of thing. So over years and years of evolution, it's developed a really good qualities to withstand different extremes in environment and climate, that sort of thing. So that's what focused our attention on that specific seaweed. And from there, we've been able to precision engineer our biostimulants, that sort of thing. So such as PSI 362.
But fundamentally, you're offering Irish farmers a source of biostimulant that can be that is indigenous to Ireland.
Yeah, we are, absolutely. So we're giving them an Irish-made product that can solve an Irish problem, sort of thing. So it's an Irish solution to an Irish problem. So
the big issue, or one of the big issues that has confronted farmers over the past 12 months, is the cost of all their inputs.
Yep.
You'd be aware of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's
Does that hinder your business model moving forward, where there is this sense of, my goodness, the cost here could be prohibitive, let's just stick to what we know?
No, I think we've come to the brink now where we know we have to do something in terms of nitrate management and nitrogen management, and these sort of technologies are solutions or part solutions to trying to help farmers continue forward sustainably, both environmentally and economically. So that's what it says.
Okay, so just one last question. I was brought up during a period when legumes, clover was identified as being the inclusion, let's say, within a grass sward, and to bring down nitrogen from the atmosphere, to mineralise nitrogen, to make that available to crops. That has been readily available as a technology to Irish farmers for generations. So what would be the difference between that and what you're offering?
Well, I think that what we've got in that sort of clover base, that sort of thing, they're complementary sort of thing. So they'll go hand in hand, because we're not going to get there all the way just with clover, and we're not going to get there just all the way with, say, biostimulant. It's all these tools being implemented together to get us sustainable and down that road of less nitrogen, less dependence on artificial nitrogen, sort of thing. Like, obviously, there's loads and loads of talk about sustainability, but like using a product through branded bioscience, we're starting to deliver on that sort of thing.
Yes. Thank you so much. Okay.
I'm Kieran from Tail Jack. So Kieran, tell me, what does this actually do?
So basically this is a form of effectively calming down a cow, that a heifer comes into a parlour. She might be inclined to kick off the clusters. So I suppose traditionally there was always 3 ways for stopping a cow from kicking off the clusters. First and foremost, I suppose guys would come along and try to tie the leg back onto the parlour. The problem with that is, number one, it's time consuming. Number two, it's dangerous. So as you're putting in your hand, there's a risk you're going to get a kick there. There was a gentleman earlier that I saw, he still has a scar, 20 years on, clean the skin. So that's one way. The second way, they put on hip bars on, which kind of go in over the hip, and go into the muscle in their tape bone. The problem with that is they're not always effective. They're only about effective 60% of the time.
Okay.
Sometimes you see people putting on one on the right, one on the left, and they'd still be dancing inside the parlour. Oftentimes then, because they're in at the side of the animal, you'll find them outside the fields because people come along, they're down at the end of the stall, they pull the stall, they release them, and you find them out in the slats or out in the field. So I suppose the third option, and probably the most effective option that you'll often see vets using, or farmers if they have the second pair of hands, they'll come along, they'll climb up in the back of the parlour and they'll hold up the tail. Once the tail is held up like that, it kind of stimulates the nerve and it kind of helps calm down the cow, so they're not as agitated inside in the unit. The problem with that being, I suppose, there's two reasons. So first and foremost, while you're up there, you're in danger of slipping off.
Yeah.
Or before you secure the tail, you could get a kick. So health and safety, it's a massive thing. That's why last year when we were here at the Plowing, we won an award for safety. The idea of this being the invention that Willie and I created, it's a fully stainless steel construction. It opens out like that. You lift it up. You pop it up onto the back of the cow.
Okay.
Simply pull this, and it locks it onto the hip bones there at either side. Once it's on there, it's secure and it's not coming off. You simply pop the tail onto it, you put your tool in here, and you lift it up. Once it lifts up, gravity, it falls into place and it's locked there. You can put pressure on it there and no one's at risk, no one's in danger. Once it's secured there, you can pop on your clusters. You can go about milking. If you have a rotary parlour, you simply lock that. As soon as it comes back around, she's finished milking, you can release it. So all you do, same thing in reverse, you pop it in here, you pull the chain, it drops down, you insert your tool, and you remove it from the hips.
Fantastic. Amazing. Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks, Willie.
Cheers.
Thanks for that, Charlie. Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Farming Week podcast on the Agriland live stream from the National Ploughing Championships in Ratheniska in County Laois. We're here in the Agriland Pavilion for the live stream, sponsored by UPMC and Pearson Milking Technology. I'm joined by Agriland senior journalist Aisling O'Brien, technical beef writer Breffney O'Brien, no relation, and technical dairy writer Brian McDonnell as we run through the highlights and the news from the week of ploughing. So Aisling, let's start at the beginning of this week. Weather was something that has really factored into farming and the ploughing this week.
Absolutely, Stella. I think mud was the great leveller at Ploughing 2023. It had to be. I mean, fair play to the National Ploughing Association. Their team on site this week did Trojan work. There was tens of thousands of visitors to the ploughing, as there is every single year. And they had the mulch down, they had the tracks out, but they were under a lot of pressure out there. There was a lot of heavy machinery out there. But, you know, I think a lot of people, when they saw the rain the first day, you know, people might have been a little bit down. But we met great characters. But there were a lot of children who were loving it, Stella. They were dressed in their puddle suits. We met Quiva the Diva from Dublin, and she was down near the machinery stand and she was splashing in muddy puddles and everybody's giving her a really wide berth. But she kind of reminded us all, you know, there's no such thing as bad weather. It's bad clothes, you know, and we all kind of got on with it. But I met Paul Downs from Met Éireann as well, a meteorologist, and he told me that there was between 23 and 28 millimetres of rain fell on the site between Monday evening and Wednesday morning, and that site was already quite wet. And we know that from the car parks, and anybody who came to the ploughing over the couple of days, there was a real camaraderie in the car parks. We had to push Charles O'Donnell's car into the car park and push it out as well. So, and we're not the only ones who had to do that. But I think everybody tried to make it as pleasant an experience as possible on site. And yeah, look, I mean, the weather has been a big feature in farming this year. We discussed it on our panels, you know, especially the tillage panel. We were hearing about how the harvest of 2023 is still not even finished. Jay Phelan from Chagas was telling us that. He said it was as bad a year as he's ever seen. And it shows, I suppose, the fact that the ploughing can bring farmers together. And look, if they're having a struggle on their own farm, having the chat with another farmer, at least it might lighten the load. It might not change what's happening inside your farm gate, but at least you know you're not struggling alone as well. But yeah, as I said, it was muddy, but the wellies have been well used this week, that's for sure.
Well, for those of us who've been watching on the live stream, I think that they've seen a spectrum of starting off relatively clean on Tuesday to us all being covered almost head to toe in mud and sludge as we reach the end stages of the ploughing. Breffney O'Brien, you had the important job this week of interviewing all the school finalists for the Certified Angus Schools competition. Tell us about it.
Yes, so that took place yesterday down at the Certified Irish Angus stand. I suppose there's 5 schools that have been shortlisted from a large number of schools from across the country. They received their calves at the National Ploughing Championships, and they're going to take them calves the whole way to beef. So I suppose the 5 schools that were shortlisted are Loretto Secondary School, Clonmel, Mercy Secondary School, Kilbeggan, and Skullcrease Portlaoise, St Clair's College, Ballyjamestuff, as well as Villers School in Limerick. And I suppose, Stella, what really stood out to me about the Angus Schools competition was the fact that so many students who are from non-farming backgrounds became involved in it and really, really got a good insight into how Irish Angus beef is produced in this country and got a good understanding of farming. So, yeah, basically the 5 schools spoke at length about their projects. They're all looking into various different things, from mental health to the commercial beef value, the dairy beef index, genetics of cattle, and improving the sustainability of beef production systems in Ireland. So it was really interesting to interview these students, and I wish them all the best in their competition.
Yeah, the future of farming is certainly bright. I went down to the Certified Angus tent myself and I saw the students, and anyone that came in, they were well able to, you know, explain everything that they were doing. They were so engaged. They were so articulate for young people as well. I was very impressed by them. So it's a good sign for the future. As you said, many people coming from a non-farming background and so enthusiastic about it, Breffney.
Absolutely, and it's also worth mentioning that Anna May McHugh was down there yesterday evening, and she gave a really good speech, I suppose, just saying how important it is to bring young people along in the agricultural industry, and as well as that, people from non-farming backgrounds, and give them a better insight into how beef and how farming takes place in Ireland.
Very interesting. Brian McDonnell, we had a very interesting discussion on the dairy sector with Wicklow dairy farmer Jack Keenan and Head of Knowledge Transfer with Chagas, Dr. Joe Patton this week. Remind us of what was discussed.
Yeah, well, I suppose we've had in recent weeks the announcement that from many parts of the country, the nitrates derogation is going to be reduced from 250 to 220. So I suppose, like, to explain it a little bit more, the nitrates derogation ultimately allows farmers to exceed the legal limit of 170 kilos of organic nitrogen per hectare. So there was a lot of dairy farmers particularly operating in a region of between that 170 and 250. Now, look, I think it's in the region of about 3,000 farmers going to be affected by the drop to 220, and Jack happens to be one of these. But, like, I suppose when people think of derogation, they're thinking industrial-sized farms, but this is a 65-cow Wicklow dairy farm. You know, there are 60 cows, 20 heifers, 20 heifer calves. They have 237 units of organic nitrogen per hectare on this farm, and they face the prospect of either having to rent a further 10 hectares or lose 10 cows. You know, like, they've also, like we've covered this in Agriland before, that they invested heavily in their farm. They built a brand new shed, new milking parlour. They actually have slurry storage for 80 cows for 20 weeks, which is well in excess of their legal requirements. And they're also doing everything correctly, you know, low emission slurry spreading, clover, multi-species swards. They've done everything right, but they're still being penalised for, I suppose, measures that they can't, they're doing their best to help with, but obviously the results aren't being seen, as we've seen in the EPA reports, so they're being hit. So it's a big kind of question now for Jack, is what route does he go on his farm and what are his options?
It was, I suppose, disheartening to hear what he was saying. You know, he spoke so well and he gave such a good account of himself, and it really brought the human side of policy legislation to the fore and gave us an insight of someone who's really emotionally invested in their livelihood and in the culture of farming and really trying to do their utmost to make sure that they're also protecting our environment and making sure that his farm continues on as a legacy to be protected for the next generation. And he literally nearly couldn't do any more, and yet he just didn't know where to turn next because he was doing everything he could, but they don't know what decision they'll have to make.
Look, he's farming in Pearson with his dad. He's still quite young. He's probably obviously his plans for family at some point as well, and he'd like to see that kind of farm pass on to someone after him. But I suppose he is questioning now the sustainability of his farm. If they do lose these cows, they have to rent this extra land for 2 people to run it, to be there. You know, like, as we said already, he's invested quite heavily, and that investment was on the backing of having 80 cows on that farm, growing the farm business, making it more sustainable for 2 people to be there. And now it's looking like he's going back the ways. It's quite like sad to see. And I suppose like the big thing about this is like it's not a massive dairy farm. It's a small, 65 cow, you're at below average size dairy farm for the country. You know, we're not dealing with a 200 cow herd that's going to lose 10 cows. We're dealing with a 65 cow herd that's going to go back to 55 cows. You know, it's quite significant.
Yeah, it's tough. Aisling, we had all the political heavyweights as well visit us at Agriland this week. All 3 ministers at the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. But it was a robust interaction, if I'd use that phraseology, between MEP Colin Markey and Social Democrats TD Holly Cairns that really got people talking.
Yes, definitely. The Social Democrats leader was pulling no punches on the Agriland stage. She was absolutely, it was a heated debate in here. And
I was definitely putting on my referee gloves there for that one.
You were, Stella. You were literally trying to keep them apart because this couch, there's a whole pile of room when people are getting
It's
heated.
cosy.
It is indeed. It is indeed. And you know, it made for great viewing both on the live stream, but also for those who visited the Agriland tent here at Stand 305. And we've had great crowds all week. But I suppose Holly Cairns was really pointing to the fact of the Fine Gael, I suppose, reaction to the nitrates derogation cut, and she felt that the party were burying their heads in the sand, and she felt that this cut was an inevitability, and that maybe that they were leading farmers to a cliff edge, doing business as usual. And she really did, I suppose, criticise the party's approach and, you know, kind of not really thinking outside the box. And she also felt that fighting to keep the 250, how does that tally up with our green image? That green image that, you know, Board B sell all around the world. And Ireland is very much an outlier when it comes to the EU, when it comes to, you know, just ourselves and 2 other EU member states who have a derogation now at this stage. But I suppose MEP Colin Markey, and he's met with the EU Commissioner for the Environment, Virginia Sinkevicius, and like he was speaking to us about there is, he feels, some room for flexibility there. And of course the Commissioner, you know, we heard from Charlie McConalogue that the Taoiseach is writing to the Commissioner and that he's also sought the Commissioner to visit Ireland and see it firsthand. And, you know, Colin Markey was saying that, you know, there can be efforts made on the ground by farmers to improve water quality, and maybe the Commissioner coming and seeing that firsthand. Now, I mean, an argument could be made, Stella, should the Commissioner have come months and months ago to see this, you know, but he also made the point that the drop from 250 to 220, it's not going to affect a huge amount of farmers, but I suppose it has to be said for the farmers it is affecting. It's going to be a huge change in a very short period of time, no more than, you know, Brian was saying about Jack, and Jack, I think, really explained very clearly how it's going to impact farmers. But yeah, it was quite the political ding-dong between the two of them.
Yeah. And I suppose from Holly Cairns' point of view, she was doing it as Colin Markey is a representative of Fine Gael. Leo Varadkar was obviously absent from the ploughing this week,
at the United
as was
Nations.
Eamon Ryan, both of them in the United States at a United Nations major congress. So they weren't here at the ploughing, and it was, I suppose, the Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil representatives then that took the flak from opposition TDs or independent TDs. But this week really kicked off the IFA election campaigning too, with candidates for the role of President and Deputy President hard at work, pressing the flesh, meeting people here at the ploughing. And of course, Agriland hosted the first live debates between the candidates here as part of our live stream. Aisling, run us through what was discussed.
Okay, so as you said, this was the first time the candidates have gone head-to-head, Stella.
We had the exclusive debates, yeah.
You know, the hustings are coming up for them. It is a gruelling campaign if you want to be the president or the deputy president of the IFA. And I suppose Martin Stapleton, who's the current national IFA treasurer, and Francie Gorman, the South Leinster regional chair, they're both bidding to replace Tim Cullinan as the leader of IFA. And I suppose what I took from the debate was there was nearly more in common than what separated both of them. And I think the message, and it was similar to what we heard in the deputy presidential debate as well, was the need for IFA to up its game, Stella. And when it comes to communications and telling the story of Irish farming in the media, you know, they deal with us in the agri-media. But I suppose communicating with maybe the more mainstream media and to reach out to the public and to bridge that gap between the consumer and the farmer and to do better by farmers. And I thought, interestingly enough as well, is that they felt that to do better communicating with their own members, because we've seen how many new farming organisations have been established in recent years. And is that a damning indictment of the IFA losing it at the grassroots, and that their members aren't aware of what is going on at the top level, and that gulf between IFA headquarters and what's happening, say, in the likes of Kerry, the likes of Mayo, and farmers down on the ground in Tipperary or wherever it might be. So I think that was quite a damning indictment, and, you know, both of those, they're at a top level of IFA, so one could say that have they failed to reach out to the grassroots as well. And it was similar as well with Pat Murphy, the Connacht Regional Chair, and Alice Doyle, the Farm, Family and Social Affairs Committee Chair. Of course, they're bidding to become the Deputy President of IFA to replace Brian Rush. And they both called for, you know, the need for better communication, to get out there on the airwaves and to talk to, you know, people on the ground, and to make sure that people know what's going on inside the farm gate. Because I think when the general public hears things like nitrates, derogation, and, you know, we all know that there is a need to improve water quality, but it does nothing to improve the image of farmers and the vilification of farmers that we see on a daily basis. And the IFA needs to probably do better at that. And it's obvious from the four candidates looking for the top jobs in IFA that have they failed to do that. You know, all of these other farm organisations that have been formed, Alice Doyle and Pat Murphy both spoke to that. I thought it was interesting the interaction between Martin Stapleton and Francie Gorman. They were very polite to each other.
They were very polite. I was expecting a lot more cut and thrust.
Martin Stapleton
was very polite.
Forgive me for saying it, Francie, but, you know, I feel, and I thought that was a shocking way to approach maybe a debate between two candidates. Again, as you say, take the gloves off there and have at it. You know, I mean, if Francis, who was chairing the debate, our deputy news editor, you know, asked both candidates, you know, what makes you different? What makes you better? You know, and Francie Gorman said, I'm better. You know, and his supporters, and both camps had their supporters in. There was whooping and hollering in this tent, I tell you. You know, but they both said they were opinionated and everything like that, but they were very polite. And I don't know, will that cut the mustard on the hustings? I think they're going to have to get a little less cordial, maybe.
I think it was the first out of the traps. I think that the exclusive debates on the Agriland live stream. I think the hustings might be a bit of a different situation when they have a room full, one half of it full of their own supporters, the other half full of the opponent supporters, and it could be a very interesting couple of weeks with the hustings over the next few weeks.
Absolutely, and with the grassroots as well, and with farmers with their own issues in different counties, and they might feel that, you know, IFA headquarters aren't listening to them. There's different issues around the county or the country. In my own county in Kerry, there's issues in Donegal, you know, and I'm sure the candidates will have to get some robust exchanges and have to put up with that.
That's true. Well, listen, we'll move on. And Brian McDonnell, what other elements of the ploughing this week caught your eye?
Well, I suppose I would have been mainly around kind of a lot of the dairy stuff with this ploughing this year, obviously being the...
Wouldn't be like you, Brian.
No. But, like, I suppose it's look, dairy farming is quite intensive. It's quite... A lot of stress, a lot of work goes on at certain times of the year, particularly in the spring and around the breeding season. And all the companies are working on technology was the big thing. Every single of the milking machine companies or the dairy associate companies, technology is the big focus now. You know,
what kind of technology?
Like stuff that's going to make the farmers' life easier. Like I know we've seen heat detection collars, we've seen heat detection or health monitoring systems. But I suppose one of the ones in the Pearson tent that caught my eye was the the bullseye system, which is actually a body condition scoring machine, which can be placed at the exit of the milking parlour. It can also be used on suckler herds as well. But like it can basically, takes another job away from the farmer, going out and handling cows every day. This is giving you constant data on your cows. You can then feed it into your tablet or your phone or your computer, and you can pick out your 10 cows that need to be looked at, or your 10 cows that are over conditioned, and you can then feed them accordingly or look after them accordingly. Like, it's a bit of kit that could be very useful in a lot of farmers, particularly during that time of year between calving and breeding, when you're really focused on keeping condition on cows and getting cows back in the correct condition. And obviously then again in the back end of the year when you're maybe worried about cows getting over conditioned coming into calving. So like, it's these kind of little bits of technology that are going to be vital for a lot of farmers going forward. And look, I think every farmer now, or most farmers, will be using some kind of a smartphone, and they'll have some kind of a system on their phone. But we're going to see, I think, a lot more farmers doing a lot more work on their farm from maybe their kitchen table on their phone or their computer where they can do it. You know, it's quite impressive to see some of the tech that's out there now.
Breffney O'Brien, what about you? Any other memorable aspects from Ploughing 2023?
Well, I suppose there was three things in particular that I remember from the ploughing this year, and I suppose they're the attitude of the people and the crowds that were in attendance. Like, you know, the weather maybe mightn't have been that favourable on the first and second day, and in the run up to it, things were pretty muddy. But as Aisling pointed out, you know, everybody really just got into it, got the wellies, the wet gear on, and had a good day, had a great time. The livestock was great to see as well. While not all the breed societies were in attendance, some of them were. And it's great to see the livestock as well. You see, a lot of people would come here maybe from non-farming backgrounds and love to get out to see the cattle there. And I suppose to meet the people involved, the breeders and the people in the societies as well. I suppose they are two, of the main things that really stood out to me, Stella.
Absolutely. And Aisling, of course, the ploughing is an event, and many people only get to wander around the trade stand area here for the whole day. But remember, it is a competition, and expert ploughmen and ploughwomen really put their skills to the test over the 3 days and in the preliminaries and the weekend before. Give us some details of the Ploughing Champions for 2023.
350 competitors took part this week. Right across the country, we had ploughmen and ploughwomen who had qualified through the local ploughing matches in their own county. Great camaraderie out in the field. Tricky conditions at the start, Stella, it has to be said. But as you said, all of the competitors, they are experts in their field. These are very fine margins. I mean, what separates them points-wise can often be just 1 or 2 points to take an All-Ireland home to a county. And I know from Kerry, winning an All-Ireland in Croke Park or here in Ratheniska, it's great for a county. It's such a boost. There's homecomings. There's going to be bonfires lit around the country now with ploughmen and ploughwomen coming back with titles. I suppose looking at some of the results over the few days, we have full lists of results on Agriland. We're not going to be able to obviously mention everybody. Say the intermediate conventional plough class, Frank Cullen, County Wexford. Under 28 conventional and senior plough class, Stephen Tracy, County Carlow. The under 21 conventional senior plough class, Noel Nyan from Cork West. I suppose, look, you have Michael O'Halloran from County Kerry, come on the Kingdom, intermediate reversible plough class. And I think it's just a thing for all ages. And I think where we're talking about bringing young farmers, I think I love that about the ploughing. I think the lads would agree. There's such an interest from all ages in the ploughing. And when people get involved in it, they just love it. And ploughs, there's fine, you see them tuning it with all of the machinery and their spanners and all the rest of it, and they're out with their measuring tapes, and it's great because it's multi-generational. And the horse ploughing, fantastic to see. We'd Charlie on the Agriland team went out. She met all of those involved in the horse ploughing. Richard Halloran, of course, our tillage specialist, out and about meeting the plough men and women, and lovely to see the horse plough. It's such a draw every single year. It was fantastic. Real horsepower.
And you talked about the young people there just before we finish up. One small memory that stuck with me that I thought was lovely for the week was when I met very small girls, Quiva, Ella and Lauren Farrelly, and they came in and there was the gator outside, and I was joking with them. I said, you know, can I hop in the gator? They were in the front and there was no room. I said, I'll hop in the back. And they turned around, they're very small, and they said, no, it's too dangerous. And I was like, it was great to hear 3 little girls, you know, from a farming background who already knew that it was dangerous, you know. They had the
Fantastic.
sense. So that's what we like to see for the future. Well, that's it from the Farming Week podcast from the National Ploughing Championships. Stay tuned to the podcast again next week as we'll be back to normal service with all the latest updates from the world of agriculture. I want to thank our sponsors, UPMC and Pearson Milking Technology, for being our partners on the live stream from the ploughing site here in Ratheniska in County Laois. We'll wrap it up there. It has been a fantastic 3 days at Plowing 2023. I just want to thank all of the Agriland team for their Trojan work over the last number of weeks and months, because this doesn't come together easily. It takes a long time and a lot of preparation. To all the Agriland team and the extended team that came on board for this event, and also thank you so much to the NPA, Anna May McHugh and Marie McHugh, and all the NPA staff who've been so courteous and so helpful to us all throughout the entire thing, the catering and security. Thank you so much for all of your help, and to all our sponsors, and particularly to you for watching and listening, and to all the people who come into the Agriland tent to say they downloaded the app, they follow the news every day, or they listen to our podcasts. That's what we do it for. We do it for you. So thank you so much for tuning in. Until 2024, Ploughing 2024, we'll be back again. Take care.